Tonight I'm going to discuss 5 different subjects. Each one takes about an hour and a half. I'm going to do them really 15, 20 minutes each. I'm lying. But you're going to hear a little bit tonight about the dragon, the serpent, which is Islam. The harlot riding the dragon, which is the banks, corporations, and oil companies, commonly known as the Council on Foreign Relations. And you know that there is such a thing as a one world government. You know this. Okay, because I don't know this group, but I imagine if they're with you, they're postgraduates, so it's good. Yes. So, of course, I'm going to talk about Islam. I'm going to talk about the Judeo-Christian Bible Bloc Party, which I'm working to form, and I'm leading this party in the next elections. It hasn't been born yet, but it's not a dream anymore. It's already in its late stages of pregnancy.
Praise God.
So the party hopefully will be registered very soon. Our next elections in Israel are a year and a half from now. So I'm hoping to have it registered sometime between the next 2 months. We go back in a few weeks. Rachel goes back this Wednesday. Pray for his traveling mercies. I go back 2 weeks later. So we're hoping before I or we come back in June, the party will be registered. If not, it'll be registered right after the holidays, high holidays. They'll still leave us a year for the campaign. We need money. So, okay. And the final message will be about the new book, which I've just written, and it is about the final victory of Judeo-Christianity over Islam, and that the devil will be sent to the pits of hell for 1,000 years. Amen. And it will happen because of the Arab Spring. It will happen because the Arab Spring will come to Saudi. It will happen because Saudi Arabia will implode. There will be complete chaos and anarchy. And the one world government will ask or demand of Israel that it occupy northwestern Saudi Arabia. And by the way, does anyone know where Mount Sinai is? Is it in the Sinai Peninsula? No. Where is it? Northwest Saudi Arabia. And now Rachel and I spent 2 wonderful nights in Mississippi in Diamond Head with the Caldwells. You know the Caldwells. And we apologize. We don't have any of their DVDs left. Rachel has their business card, which we can give out to anyone who wants to order them. But I'm selling their DVD together with my new book because it's like 2 hands clapping. And we're working very closely with the Caldwells. Okay, so first, since you all are Americans, I'm an American too, by the way. I'm an Israeli and I'm an American. I have 2 passports. I pay taxes in both countries. Just remember, give unto the Lord that which is the Lord's, and give unto the 2 Caesars that the 2 Caesars are stealing from you. Because I paid Uncle Sam and I paid Israel, so, okay. And you have to be happy about paying the 2 Caesars because you're running for office. So, you pay your taxes happily, because it happens to politicians who don't pay their taxes happily. Okay. So first I'm going to start with an American testimony. And the American testimony will overshadow the entire testimony, and the American testimony will point to the results of the next elections in November. Okay, and you'll forgive me if I say this, but my message is not bashing the Democrats. I am an equal opportunity attacker of Republicans and Democrats, because we have had some very bad presidents on the Republican side too, who are not friends of Israel. Okay. I have spoken a lot in Dallas to Tea Parties, and I kick them all in the butt. And I say to them, you have no idea the surprise that's waiting for you in November. You think, if Fox keeps trying to say, well, Obama's not going to win, Obama's not going to, everything points to him losing popularity polls and everything. Wait till a few months from now, and I'll explain to you why. But that's all the more reason not to give up, but to fight hard and not to be complacent. And everybody has to go, excuse me, vote for the Republican, whoever wins the nomination. Okay. I started my ministry, so-called, in the churches in November, December of 1990. November, December 1990 was Desert Shield. Desert Storm was in January, just 2 months later. I came here, I made certain predictions. All the predictions came true. When I came back in April 1991, everybody said Avi's a prophet. I said, I'm not a prophet. I was briefed as an Israeli army spokesman by our defense ministry in Israel. So we knew exactly what was going to happen, and that Saddam Hussein was going to be expelled from Kuwait. So, number 1, I'm not a prophet. Number 2, I'm an army spokesman. I listened to what I'm briefed, and I came here and I shared it. Okay. I come back in April 1991, and a lady in Dallas who had heard me in November says, Avi, we need you in Dallas. Get on the next plane. Tomorrow night you're speaking before the Council on Foreign Relations. How many people heard of it? Okay. Now, I didn't know what that was, by the way. I just thought, she said it's an economic forum. And, and I was a babes in the wood. I had just begun speaking in churches. I didn't know what it was. My Christian friend said to me, you better be careful. These people ain't Christians. If you get in their way, they will kill you. Because their God is money, mammon. Okay. I see this as a hot group. I like this group. I can already see by the responses you already will know where I'm going with this. And anyway, so I get there, and I want you to know that God has a tremendous sense of humor. I obviously was a pinch hitter. I mean, if they bring you a 24-hour notice, you're a pinch hitter for somebody who wasn't showing, because they plan their meetings a year or two in advance. Who was I replacing? Boris Yeltsin of Russia. Boris Yeltsin had been contracted to give 4 lectures. He gave 2 lectures, which went very well. Then he got drunk, and he was a terrible alcoholic. He had to go straight to the hospital, so he put him on a plane to a sanatorium in Russia. And the third night, it was a complete wipeout because they had nobody to speak. The fourth night was paid for. They needed a speaker. So you see, God in heaven had to make Boris Yeltsin so drunk that the doors would open for Avi Lipkin to come and speak. By the way, what holiday did we just enjoy? Purim. And Achashverosh was a terrible drunk. So anyway, so Boris Yeltsin. By the way, Boris Yeltsin was a great man. I appreciate him. He opened up the doors of Russia to foreign investment, to oil companies. Putin afterwards threw everybody out, but like Stalin did. But Boris Yeltsin was a good man, and he was not an anti-Semite. That's an important point. Now again, God has a sense of humor. When I got there, General Latham, retired, says to me, so tell me, sir, what's it like to be a general in the Israeli army? And I said to him, general? And all of a sudden he turned white. He said, aren't you General A. Lipkin, Chief of Staff of the Israeli Army? You thought he was getting Amnon Lipkin. And I said, no. I am Lieutenant A. Lipkin of the Army Spokesman's Office. And anyway, I promised them a good message. They were so pleased. They said they would invite me back. And they did invite me back, but I couldn't go because the Israeli government said you cannot debate with any Palestinian terrorist organization, such as the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which is today the moderate Palestinian Authority. While at the same time Rabin and Peres and Yossi Beilin were talking behind everybody's backs with the same terrorist organization. I couldn't come back to Dallas and debate. Okay, won't get into that. So anyway, I gave them a military presentation, and I explained to them, not from political reasons, but from military reasons, why Israel must not give up the Jordan River as a border, as a security line. We may not give up half the Golan that we still hold. We already gave away half the Golan in '74 under the pressure of Kissinger. And we should never give up Gaza. Okay, now, by the way, we did give up Gaza. Did we get peace? Now, you've heard, how many people have heard what's going on in the last few days? Okay, you know that 14 terrorists were killed and they've launched over 130 missiles into Israel. Okay, so I'm glad Rachel and I are starting our drive back to New York tomorrow. Okay, we need to get home. And I explained to them, you've all heard of the United Nations, obviously. And you have UN resolutions 242 and 338 that said that Israel should give up land for peace, but Israel should have new borders, okay? New borders, not the 67 borders. New borders which are secure, recognized, and defensible. As a defense spokesman, I was talking about the borders which were defensible. That was my message. Anyway, we had dinner. After dinner, they said, Avi, you're a good speaker for Israel. You know why? Because you don't speak with a funny Israeli accent. We understand everything you're trying to say to us. They said, we in Dallas don't like funny accents. They said, we don't like Russian accents of Yeltsin. We don't like Arabic accents, because they always had these Arabic oil princes speaking. We don't like Jewish accents. We don't like Oxford English of the Queen. And you speak like a Yankee, because I'm from New York originally. But you speak good English, but you don't know realities. This is what I'm opening my message with tonight. This is like, if you understand the next 2 points, you understand the dilemma that Israel is in right now. And this was in 1991. This has nothing to do with Obama. Obama is just possibly the worst fruit of the entire system. But the system has been in place for decades. They said to me, number one, America is tired of paying for your wars. Now, if many of you were wondering why doesn't Israel go ahead and attack Iran? Throw all caution to the winds. Go ahead and attack Iran. I know a lot of Americans are gung-ho. Let Israel do the job. Let Israel do the job. Newt Gingrich said, let Israel do the job. Everybody's saying, let Israel do the job. So listen to this. They said to me, we will not give Israel another airlift like Nixon did in '73. We are tired of paying for Israel's wars. You Jews are going to make peace with the Arabs whether you like it or not. And we don't care about UN resolutions 242 and 338. Of course, after we gave away Sinai 3 times, after we gave away half the Golan, which is 93% of the land. What are we talking about? We're talking about 7% of the land that remains. And the second point is the punchline for my entire message tonight. They said, you have to remember, there's only one thing that made America great, and that's the barrel of oil. The steady price of oil, the steady supply of oil, and we're not going to let the Jews get in the way of that. Is that clear? Go back to Shamir and tell him. And I did. Meanwhile, there were these 2 Christian couples sitting with me that night. One of them had gotten me onto Marlon Maddox radio. Do you have Marlon point of view here? No. Okay. The other one was Zola Levitt. How many people remember Zola Levitt? I've done like 20 TV shows with him, God willing. On the 29th, we're taping with Zola with Miles Weiss, who was the new interviewer and speaker. Okay. So Eric Gustafson, this patron of mine, gets up, Christian guardian angel of mine that night, and he looked at the people in the room, and he said, you call yourselves Christians? You say that what made America great was the barrel of oil, the steady price of oil, steady supply of oil. That's what made America great. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Because what made America great was not the barrel of oil. What made America great was Jesus Christ. Yeah. That's right. And, you know, I'm a Jew. I'm from Israel. And I really didn't like Jesus Christ until that night. And all of a sudden the lights went on. I began to understand things that I'd never understood before. And then his daughter got up. He said, besides, it says in the Bible, those who bless Israel are blessed, and those who curse Israel are cursed. Yes. And, you know, little by little, I was getting my gumption together to respond to these people. And I said to them, you know, we Jews never came in the way of oil supplies. And in fact, in World War II, we lost 6 million Jews because of the oil supplies. Now, you have to understand something. There were 3 factors to the deaths of 6 million Jews. Of course, the Nazis killed them. The Arabs demanded that the Nazis kill them as part of their loyalty to Nazism, because the Muslim Brotherhood, how many people heard of the Muslim Brotherhood? They were Nazis. In World War II, they were allied with Hitler, and the British government suppressed them in England, in Egypt. And then the third group that was guilty for the death of 6 million Jews was the United States, Britain, and Canada. Now, I think you probably showed your group the movie St. Louis, the ship to St. Louis. How many people know about the St. Louis ship? Okay, St. Louis was a refugee ship, Nazi propaganda film. The ship left the port of Hamburg in May '39, which was 4 months before the outbreak of World War II. The ship left Nazi Germany carrying 900 Jews to Cuba, not to the U.S., to Cuba. How many people heard the name Breckinridge Long? Breckinridge Long was your Undersecretary of State for visas under Roosevelt. He called the Cuban government and said, cancel the visas, send the ship back to Nazi Germany. The ship returned to Europe, not to Germany, but to Antwerp in Belgium. It stopped off the coast of Florida in 3 different places. The Coast Guard was constantly sailing around the ship to make sure that no Jews would jump from the ship and go to the shore. Then when the ship sailed past the Canadian maritime provinces, hundreds of pastors signed a petition, at least have mercy on the children, let them off the ship. And Mackenzie King, who was the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, said, 1 Jew is 1 Jew too many. And so the ship went back to Europe. World War II had already broken out. 100 of the Jews succeeded in escaping, but 800 of the Jews died in the Holocaust. In other words, there was a deal that the Allies, the British, the Canadians, and the Americans were saying to the Arabs, we will refuse visas to the Jews if you remain loyal to us. In other words, the Allies strategically did not want the oil in Arabia to fall into the hands of Hitler. This would have been critical in World War II. And by the way, because the Brits under Montgomery defeated Rommel at the Battle of El Alamein, it was basically the end of the Nazis in North Africa anyway. But the deal was the death of 6 million Jews. By the way, at the end of World War II, when everybody knew the war was over, from 1944 to 1945, after D-Day, I mean, everybody knew the war was going to be over. The British and the Americans and even the Russians could have sent a bomber, one plane, every day to bomb the one railroad track going into the crematoria and gas chambers. We could have saved 1 million or 2 million Jews at the end of World War II. So very clearly, there was a very clear-cut decision by the Allied powers to kill the Jews in collusion with the Arabs. Okay. So, okay, let's get back to Dallas. So Dallas Council on World Affairs, are you saying to me that Israel will be forced back to the borders of June the 5th, 1967? They said yes. I said, do you know that this means the suicide of Israel and another Holocaust? They said yes. Now you got it. Go back to Shamir and tell them. And so that night, I swore an oath to God that I would march with the Christians. Because if you had had a Christian president in World War II, not Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was a socialist Democrat. Your president today is a socialist Democrat. And even though the Jews are stupid enough to vote for him, this president hates the Jews. He hates the Jews, he hates the Christians, he hates the Bible. You all saw about how he mocks the Bible. Okay. And so a lot of people in this country are deceived. By the way, in the Middle East, you speak to any Jew, Christian, or Muslim, they all know he's a Muslim. The only people on the face of the earth that don't know that the American president is a Muslim are the American people. Okay. Okay. And so I came to the conclusion that there are two types of Americans. You got the Christians and you got the anti-Christians. The anti-Christians, forgive me for saying it, are the people who have controlled Washington now for decades. And if Israel wants to survive, if we want to survive, we have to swim in a shark-infested ocean. And therefore, my work for the last 22 years, for whatever it's worth, has been to mobilize the Christians to stand with Israel. You know why? Because it's your Israel. It's your Jerusalem. And it's your Messiah. Okay, Messiah is not coming or returning only for the Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay. Okay, so we have finished the first part. We have finished the first part of my message. America is very sick. America has been very sick. Prayer was taken out of schools in 62. Abortion, Roe versus Wade, 73. This country has been on a constant march away from God, away from the Bible, away from Jesus Christ. And by the way, the fact that Israel survives to this day is only by miracle of God. Okay, now, I'm going to do a teaching now called The 5 Deceptions of Islam. I have it on the white CD and DVD. There's a white DVD and a white CD on the table. And half of that is the 5 Deceptions, 45 minutes. Half of it is about the Arab Spring and about Obama's plan to make America a Muslim country by 2016 by bringing in 100 million Muslims into this country. And I will explain to you exactly how Obama's going to do it, how he's going to get reelected, how he's going to bring 100 million Muslims to this country. And if you protest, you're going to join me in jail because I already have a 3-year jail sentence in Switzerland. And that law is coming here because I preach against Islam. Hillary Clinton and President Obama are working to bring this European law here that if you preach against another religion, you're going to jail. And it's probably going to happen through some kind of backdoor executive order. Okay. Okay, 5 Deceptions of Islam. And I can do this in 2 hours also. I'm going to try and do this telegraphically. Islam is a religion of love. How many people have heard Islam is a religion of love? President George W. Bush said it. How many people remember? Okay. Islam is a religion of peace. How many people heard that? That's deception number 2. And George W. Bush said it. Third thing he said, we all worship the same God. Okay, I'm gonna refute all this. By the way, how many people heard of Rick Warren and the Purpose-Driven Church? Okay, you're my kind of people, let me tell you. Okay. Who?
Robert Schuller said.
And you know what happened to Robert Schuller. You know what happened. Okay. Because you mess with God, I don't advise anybody to mess with God. Okay. And the fourth is that they believe in Jesus Christ, which I will refute. And the fifth is the Quran is a holy book. Okay, now I'm doing this telegraphically. I'm leaving out a whole lot of stuff, which is in my books, it's in the CDs, in the DVDs. We got to get into the XYZs of the message, which come later. Okay. Firstly, what does Jesus teach all of us? Do you say Jesus or Yeshua? Yeshua. Okay, I don't want to offend anyone. When I'm in the Baptist church, I got to say Jesus. If I say Yeshua, I offend them. When I'm in these groups, I have to say Yeshua and not Jesus. So, okay. What did the Rabbi of Nazareth teach us? He said the two most important commandments are what? Bravo. That's actually more important than love and love, okay? He said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Translation needed or not? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God. Okay, the second one is love thy neighbor as thyself. Okay? Now, if you can show me that in the Quran, I give you $1 million. It's not there. Okay, so is Islam a religion of love? Doesn't teach it. Now, the Muslims will say, and they're right, but Muslims are loving people. And it's true. You know why Muslims are loving people? Because they're people. People are created in the image of whom? God. But their system is not a loving system. Let me ask you another question. Are German people loving people? But are Nazis? Are Japanese loving people? But are Tojo fascists? Okay, Russians, Chinese, and Cambodians, are they loving people? But communists? No. Okay, so you see, communism, Nazism, Tojo fascism, Islam are all man-made religions. I'm going to explain how Islam was created and how it became such a scourge on the face of the earth. Okay. So we're in agreement, Islam is not a religion of love. And we will forgive George W. Bush for saying it, and God will judge him. God will judge every one of us here. Okay. Secondly, Islam is a religion of peace. Okay. Okay, now praise God, I see a lot of young people here. I'm from the Vietnam generation. And if you remember the media in the Vietnam generation, they would say this or that Viet Cong village was pacified. Now, pacified usually meant immolated in napalm. There was no more Viet Cong village. That's what Islam means. It means the eradication, submission, or subjugation of all the non-Muslims. Okay. So pacification comes from peace, but pacification is the opposite of peace. Same with Islam. Islam means something else. It means the opposite. Okay. So let me ask you a question. Does God love the sword, or does God hate the sword? How many people think that God loves the sword? If you think God loves the sword, raise your hand. One hand? No. That's a metaphor. That's a simile. A sword of judgment. Who judges? Okay. It's not a sword to chop people. Oh, okay. I don't want. Let me continue because I go. Okay. Now, how many people think that God hates the sword? One hand, two hands, three hands. I know you guys are militant, so that's why maybe some people maybe like the sword. But by the way, I want you to know I don't hate the Muslims. I love the Muslims. But to bless these people, you got to ban their system. Germany in 45. I mean, I would never have said this when I was a young kid. I said Truman was wrong for nuking the Japs. He should have nuked the Germans before what they did to us. But America did what Jesus said, which is to love the enemy. America loved the enemy, bless the enemy, but you banned their system. America loved Japan, banned Tojo fascism. Look at Germany and Japan today. They're both democratic systems. Japan is your best ally in the Far East, and Germany is really your most powerful ally in Europe. And they're all democracies. Okay. What did God say to Noah? Was Noah Jewish? Oh, yeah. Noah wasn't Jewish. Noah was the father of all of us. Okay, what did he say to Noah? Anyone who sheds the blood of another human being, what happens to him? His blood will be shed because he has shed the blood of somebody created in the image of whom? God. You've killed God when you kill a human being. Okay. What does the Quran say? Chapter 2, verse 216 of the Quran. Slaughtering people with the sword is obligatory upon you. And even though you might not like to slaughter people, and you might think it's a bad thing, but Allah knows it's a good thing to slaughter people with a sword. Is that God? Now wait a second. If we're in the image of God, who wants all the human beings dead? Satan. By the way, when they say Allahu Akbar, it means Allah is greater than the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. How can Allah be greater as long as there are human beings on the face of the earth? For Allah to be greater than God, every human being, including the Muslims, they all must die. That's why the Muslims kill each other too, with a vengeance. Okay. Remember King David? Don't we all love King David? But King David was disqualified from building the temple. He was a man of the sword. Solomon made love, not war. Solomon built the temple. Now, Solomon also destroyed the kingdom and split in two because of those 1,000 women. Okay. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure nobody falls asleep here tonight. I know what keeps people awake. Okay, now, what did Jesus say? He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. Okay, so does God love the sword? God doesn't love the sword. Okay. Now, what does Islam call itself? Din Saif. Din Saif means religion of the sword. Is that Judeo-Christianity? No. It's the opposite. And we're going to get to Allah now. Allah is the religion, is the God of the sword. You look at the Saudi flag, you see a sword, and the Arabic letters La Allah illa Allah wa Muhammad Rasulullah, which means there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. I'm going to show you now in a few minutes who was Muhammad and who was the prophet. I mean, who was Allah. It's all the antithesis of everything that Jews and Christians believe. Okay. So let's look at God. Who's God? God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Amen? Amen. Isn't that holy for Christians too? Yes. Says so 7 times in the New Testament. What's the very first verse of the New Testament? These are the generations of Jesus Christ, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, it's holy for you guys. If you delegitimize Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who else are you delegitimizing? Jesus himself. Okay. Now, we all know Abraham is the father of the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. Okay? But then there's a split. There is a sibling rivalry. Let's talk about sibling rivalries. Okay? Sarah cannot bear children, and so Sarah brings her handmaiden Hagar, and she bears Abraham a son. And before she bears him a son, she's pregnant, she gets cocky, she gets arrogant, Sarah sends her away. An angel of the Lord appears before Hagar and says, Hagar, you're going to have a son, his name is going to be Ishmael, and he's going to be a wild ass of a man. A wild donkey. How many people know that? That Ishmael is a donkey. Okay. And his hand will be against everybody else's hand, and everybody else's hand will be against his hand, and he will dwell in the face of his brethren. Okay, now you know the American slang, hey man, you're in my face? You better get out of my face, or that means war. That's Genesis 16, verse 11. In other words, Ishmael is a warrior. He's not only a warrior, he's a warrior of permanence, constant warfare. And I think, and I say this with great pain, that this is one of the most prophetic verses in the entire Bible. Because you look today, I don't want to say 100% of the wars, but almost 100% of the wars in the world today involve Islam in one way or another. They're fighting the Jews, they're fighting the Christians, they're fighting the Hindus, they're fighting the Buddhists, they're fighting the blacks in Africa. Even the Muslim blacks in Darfur, 500,000 have been slaughtered. And over 1 million displaced and raped and tortured and all these things. So Islam is a racist system against the black people too. And then of course the Muslims kill each other. That's it, that's Ishmael. That is the legacy of Ishmael. Okay. Now you know the story about the 3 angels that came to the tent of Abraham and said, you're going to have a baby, and he laughed his head off. And God said, are you laughing at me? And Abraham said, moi? And Sarah was laughing her head off inside of the tent. She overheard it. Are you laughing at me? Moi? And sure enough, Isaac is born. And what does Isaac mean in Hebrew? Laughter. You guys are great, Okay. Sometimes I'm in churches and people are sitting there with their eyes glazed over, like they never heard any of this stuff before. Okay. So it's the ABCs of the message, but you've got to understand the ABCs. So Abraham comes before the Lord and says, with all due modesty and realism, listen, I'm 99, she's 90. It's enough for me that Ishmael should live before you. Isn't that what he said to God? Yes. And God says to Abraham, it is through Isaac your seed will be called. That's right. God says this 4 times. This is the first time. Second time, the child is born. When he reaches the age of 2 or 3, Abraham has a big party for him because he has been weaned. He can now eat normal food. And I love the King James. King James says, and Sarah saw Ishmael behaving in a haughty manner with her son, Isaac. How many people know that verse? Okay. Now, first I want to ask a question. Anyone here has never been haughty? Raise your hand. If you've never been haughty, raise your hand. Because anyone who raised their hand for that one is very naughty. Okay, now I don't know if you know this or not, but what Sarah saw was not haughty or mocking. What Sarah saw was that Ishmael basically sodomized her son. How many people know that? Ishmael sodomized her son. The word in Hebrew is mitzachek. You have to read this in the original Hebrew. Mitzachek means sex, okay? Where do we see this? You remember Rebekah and Isaac? When they have the famine, Rebekah and Isaac go to the king of Gerar, and they live with the Philistines. And of course, Isaac, like his father, says, oh, that's my sister. Yeah. That's not my wife. Right. And so the king of Gerar is a peeping Tom. He's looking through the window, and he sees them, as King James would say, sporting. You know what sporting means. Okay, so he comes to Isaac. It says, I thought you said that was your sister. Verily, that is your wife. He says, well, I thought you were going to kill me and take her. Okay. Okay. So that's where you see mitzachek. Do you remember the Ten Commandments? Moses comes down from Mount Sinai with the Ten Commandments, and he smashes them. Why? He saw the people of Israel mitzachek. By the way, if anyone read the Torah reading Ki Tisa, this weekly reading, it was in the weekly reading today, Ki Tisa in Exodus. I think it's chapter 33 or something. So you see the word mitzachek many times. By the way, it appears another time also where the wife of Potiphar, after she tries to seduce Joseph and he runs away, leaves her his cloak, she says to her husband, he tried to rape me, when it was she who was trying to have sex with him. So he says, why did you bring this Hebrew slave to litzachek banu? Which is basically, it always has a sexual connotation. Rashi, the great rabbi, said this was incest. Okay. So Sarah comes before Abraham and says, send them away. Send the mother and the son away, Ishmael and Hagar. Now let me ask you a question. Let's do some psychology 101. Did Abraham love Ishmael? So what if he was a donkey? He was a good son. I mean, he was his only son. How can a father send away a son for doing even the most heinous thing, even murder? Okay. And so he goes before the Lord, and the Lord says, listen to Sarah, send them away. Okay, now, by the way, another hint is that Abraham was extremely wealthy. He had donkeys, he had camels, he had gold, he had silver, very wealthy. He sends Hagar and Ishmael away. How? With one piece of bread and a pitcher of water, which in the desert will last you for about half an hour, and then you die. In other words, Abraham was basically condemning Hagar and Ishmael to death. And Abraham, this is a very important point I'm going to raise now. Abraham comes before God and says, what's going to happen to Ishmael? And God says, don't worry about Ishmael. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to bless him. He's going to be the father of many nations. Amen? By the way, is God a liar? Does God keep his word? Yes. Did God bless Ishmael? Yes. Did he make out of Ishmael a mighty nation? Yes. Okay. And today, the Muslims are 1/6, maybe 1/5 of the human race, because God kept his word. Okay? Now, by the way, I have to ask you a question. You've all heard of Walid Shoebat. Oh, yeah. Okay, and I've learned this from him. I mean, I love Walid. We're buddies. We're really alter egos. And by the way, he called me once when I was in New York, said, would you like to travel with me together? I said, sure I would. The question is, I don't know if they're going to kill you because of me or they're going to kill me because of you. But we're good buddies. Anyway, I learned this from Walid. He said to me, in Arabic, one of the names of Allah, the God of Islam, is Al-Makr. Has anyone heard that word? No. You remember Mack trucks, M-A-C-K? Put E-R at the end, Makr. Al-Makr. Al-Makr in Arabic means the greatest of all the liars and deceivers. In other words, in Islam, it is a virtue to lie. Because in Islam, the God of Islam is the greatest of the liars and deceivers. How many people heard the word taqiyya? Yeah. Taqiyya means it is a commandment to lie to the infidel. So lying is just part, the way they breathe, they lie, okay? It's part of their system, it's part of their God, okay? But our God is not a liar. Our God makes a covenant, it's forever, amen? When God makes a covenant with the Jews, it's forever. Amen? So I also take the liberty as a Jew to say when God makes a covenant with the Christians, it's forever too. And I say the tree cannot survive without the branches, but the tree can also not survive without the roots. So we Jews and Christians are kind of stuck with each other, whether we like it or not. And anybody who attacks the branches attacks the roots, and anybody who attacks the roots attacks the branches. Okay. Now I'm going to take a little liberty here. You know the book of Revelation. You know, Jesus returns and he sends the devil to the pits of hell for 1,000 years, okay? Now, why can't Avi Lipkin send the devil to the pits of hell for 1,000 years? Why can't Lori or Stan send the devil to the pits of hell for 1,000 years? Why does it take a Jesus to do it? Because that devil is not a wimp. That devil is a real mean dude, okay? So you have to look today, who in the world today do you see who's the greatest of all the mean dudes? It's the Muslims, because of their God. Not Muslims as individuals. I'm talking about a Muslim army that does what it's told by crazed leadership that follows a crazy God. Okay. So God, by allowing Ishmael to survive, and have him have many children, creates actually the army of Satan, which is what we're going to see now at the end of times. And we are in the end of times now, in case you didn't know. Okay. Okay, third example where God says, it is through Isaac your seed will be called, is, of course, Genesis 22. God says to Abraham, take your one and only son and sacrifice him on Mount Moriah. Okay, isn't that holy for every Jew and Christian? The Muslims say no. That's hogwash. That's nothing. It was Ishmael who was the chosen son. How many people have heard that for the Muslims, it was Ishmael? I don't see even half the hands, so it's important you hear this. Now, the Muslims, by the way, they have a slightly different story than the Judeo-Christians. For the Muslims, it was Ishmael, not Isaac, to be sacrificed. Does anyone know where Ishmael was supposed to be sacrificed?
On the Dome of the Rock.
No. The Dome of the Rock, Jerusalem, never mentioned in the Quran. Mecca. Bravo. Because Abraham and Ishmael built the black stone in the Kaaba in Mecca. That's the Islamic tradition. Jerusalem is never mentioned once in the Quran. But Mecca and Medina, those are the holy places for the Muslims. Okay.
Isn't that why they make the Hajj?
Good. We're going to get to that. That's going to be in my new book here, because I explain all this also in the new book. I feel like jumping ahead. I should do this methodically. Yes?
Quick question. Did Abraham and Ishmael really build the black stone in Mecca, or is that what the Muslims?
That is the Muslim tradition. Okay. Now, the story of the Hajj, which is a very good point, when Muslims go on the Hajj, part of the Hajj is to go around the black stone 7 times. I can't control myself, you'll excuse me. Here, on the cover of my newest book, my 6th book, I have down here a verse from Exodus, which I have translated in my own way, which is, let my people go. Remember, Moses says to Pharaoh 6 times, let my people go. The first time was different than the other times. The other time said, let my people go so that they may serve the Lord in the desert. This one says, let my people go so that they may go around me in circles. Because the word Chag is also holiday in Hebrew, but Chag also means to go around in circles. To go around in circles around the black stone in Mecca. Because who was the high priest of the black stone? Jethro. Jethro was the high priest of Midian. Where's Midian? Medina. And from Medina, it's a 3-day hike to the black stone. What does Moses say to Pharaoh? 3 days. And the tradition is go around 7 times. How many times do we wrap the phylacteries? Here you see the phylacteries. We wrap the phylactery 7 times around our arm. Okay? There's just too many coincidences with the phylactery. The black cube in our forehead. Okay, I'm going to get to that towards the end in about 5 hours from now.
That's okay.
Okay, now, by the way, my wife is not asking me why did I come home late. So we're good. Now, okay, so where were we? So we're talking about the Kaaba. Okay, now part of the Hajj is going around the black stone 7 times. Part of the Hajj is throwing stones. Okay, every Haji, man or woman who goes on the Hajj, must throw stones at 3 giant cement columns. You know what that represents? Okay, now, you know what a genie is? You know the golden lamp? You rub the lamp. I am the genie of the lamp. I will give you 3 requests. Now, the Quran is full of genies. Do you have any genies in the New Testament or Old Testament? The Quran is the 1001 Arabian Nights, okay? It's all fables. Okay, so the genie says to Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael, sacrifice Ishmael at the black stone. So what does Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael do? I'm teaching Islam now. They all pick up stones, the 3 of them, and they throw stones at the 3 genies, the 3 devils, and chase them away. Therefore, in commemoration of this miracle that Abraham and Hagar and Ishmael threw stones at the 3 genies, the Saudi government built these 3 giant cement columns to throw stones at the genies. Is that the Judeo-Christian testimony? Okay. They're not even playing in the same ball field as the Jews and the Christians. They're in another stadium in some other continent, okay? Now, literally. Okay, the 4th time, Sarah dies, and Abraham remarries at age 137, marries Keturah, and from 137 to 175, he has a whole bunch of kids with concubines and no Viagra in those days, and this guy's really, sorry. And I just want to make sure nobody's falling asleep, okay? And God says to Abraham, all these new kids, send them away. Because it is only Isaac, through Isaac your seed will be called. Okay, are you with me? 4 times. God says, Isaac, Isaac, Isaac. Is God confused?
No.
But you want to know something? I think we're all confused because nobody sees it. That's why I emphasize these things in my books. Next generation, you have Esau and Jacob. By the way, Esau and Jacob were twins. They come from the same mom and dad, but they were completely different, completely diametrically opposed. And in every family, you've got sons and daughters who are anointed, and you've got sons and daughters who are not anointed. You've got families where the children are anointed, the parents are not. You've got families where the parents are anointed, the children are not. So in the family of Esau and Jacob, Jacob obviously was the anointed one. What did Esau do? Esau marries 2 Canaanite women. And, we're not prejudiced against Canaanite women, but what did these Canaanites believe in? Sacrificing their children on the altar of Molech, homosexuality, bestiality, sleeping with animals. I mean, they had a whole, and sex with the temple prostitutes. Every system, the Canaanites, the Arabians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the religion of those people at the time was sex. And the priestess or the oracle in Delphi or whatever, they were just prostitutes. Fornication was part of these ancient cults. What does Acts 15 and Acts 21 say? If you know, it says, what are you to abstain from? If you're not Israelites, if you're not Jews, if you're not under the law, what do you abstain from? Don't eat meat offered to idols. By the way, that means don't eat halal. Does anyone here eat halal meat?
No.
Because when they slaughter the animal, they say in the name of Allah, Allahu Akbar. You are eating meat offered to Satan. That's even worse than the idols. Don't eat halal meat ever. Okay. You should eat kosher.
That's right.
Okay. But the second thing is fornication. Fornication does not mean premarital or extramarital sex. Fornication means sex with the temple prostitutes. Those were the religions of that time, because the Torah explains very clearly guidelines that if a man decides to have sex with a virgin who's not married, then he must pay the father of that girl and marry her and never divorce her ever. Yes. So it doesn't say that premarital sex is forbidden. It just makes a very hefty price for it. No, the guy has to marry the girl and can never divorce her because he violated her. Okay. Men can marry I don't want to go into this. It's a complicated legalistic thing. Adultery in Judaism is only with a married Jewish woman. A married Jewish man can have sex with a widow, a virgin, or a divorcee, and a non-Jewish woman. And it's very unfortunate because you got some very ultra-Orthodox people who then get HIV because they go around with other women when their wife is in the 2 weeks of her bleeding. If you know Leviticus 15:19. Okay. So Esau marries 2 women who cause such aggravation to the mother and father that they don't want to live. They say, we don't want to live anymore. And so then when Jacob steals, quote unquote, the blessing, I personally believe that Isaac knew exactly who he was blessing. I personally believe, he said the skin is the skin of Esau, but the voice is, he knew it was Jacob, and he still blessed him because he knew that Jacob was the anointed one. Okay, so then Esau comes. He says, Daddy, surely there must be some blessing left for me. Bless me. So what does the father say? You will live by the sword. Is that a blessing or is that a curse? Cursed him. Because he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. That's a curse. So what does Esau do? He goes off and marries the daughter of Ishmael, Machalat. And he becomes an Ishmaelite. Birds of a feather. So within the same lineage, you've got a dichotomy. Ishmael, Esau on one side, Isaac and Jacob on the other side. Okay. Again, I have to repeat this. First verse of the New Testament, these are the generations of Jesus Christ, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Not Esau, not Ishmael. And I'm going to say something politically incorrect, because until now, everything has been politically correct. Any Jew who has kumbaya with the Muslims, ecumenism, is an infidel, a heretic, and a traitor, because that Jew delegitimizes the sanctity, the divinity of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and prefers Ishmael. You cannot go with the Muslims because they delegitimize our holy divinity of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But any Christian in Washington is led by these Christians, supposed Christians. Any Christian who has kumbaya with the Muslims is doubly infidel, heretic, and traitor. Because they delegitimize Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and who else? Yeshua. You understand what I'm saying? It's like saying, let's have kumbaya with the Nazis. I mean, the Nazis want to kill all of us, but that's okay. Let's have kumbaya with them. Okay. So you understand who the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is. Our God is a God of creation. Allah is a God of destruction. We're going to talk about Allah now. Allah is the moon god, the war god, and the sword god of ancient Mecca and Medina. Okay? Muhammad heard voices when the Jews and the Christians rejected him as the latest and greatest of the prophets. He says, I'm going to create a religion greater than their religion. I'm going to create a God greater than their God. Now, when you hear somebody say God greater than God, who is that? Satan. Okay, that's the moon god. Okay? Now, by the way, do you know that Muhammad heard voices? No, he really did. How do you say voice in Greek? D-E-M-O-N. In Greek, it's daemon. In English, it's demon. Okay? Why did he hear voices? Because he had epilepsy. When he had epilepsy, he would fall to the ground. He'd have seizures. He couldn't breathe. Lost motor control. After 3-4 minutes, you don't breathe. What happens? You're in a near-death state. You hear voices. And so he comes to the Jews and Christians. He says, I'm greater than Moses. I'm greater than Jesus Christ. So the Jews and the Christians, who are, by the way, one people, the Jews and the Christians are the people of the book. How many people know there were one people?
We need to hear that.
What?
The Jews and the Christians, so-called, they were one people.
And we still are.
And we are still are. Because there was no new religion that Yeshua came to start.
Right. And I want to tell you something. I have to pick on my wife. I've been very nice this evening. I haven't said anything about my wife. Now I'm going to teach you. I want to ask you all a question. Is there anyone here who feels that you're a Gentile? If you feel you're a Gentile, raise your hand. You know, I go to churches and the pastor says we welcome our Jewish brother and we Gentiles. Okay, are there any Gentiles here?
No.
Okay, I love this group. Now, I didn't know that before because when I met my wife, she said to me, why did you leave America to come to Israel? I said, the Goyim hate us. How many people know the word Goyim? Goyim is Gentiles, okay? So my wife says, who are the Goyim? I said, the Christians. She says, you don't know anything, she said to me. Do you know what it is to be married to a woman 43 years? She says, I don't know anything. Besides, there's a saying, behind every successful man stands this little woman reminding him just how unsuccessful he is. Okay. So my wife said to me, Christians have the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, just like the Jews. Christians have the same Bible, or Old Testament, and Jews and Christians agree that the Messiah is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew.
That's right. Yeah.
So you're part of the tree now. You're not necessarily Jews. I mean, in the eyes of Muslims, you are Jews, but you might not be under the law, but you're still part of the same tree, okay? Now, the Muslims, my wife said, they're great people. They're like any other people, but they have another God, Allah, who's not the same as our God. They have another book called the Quran, which is the destroyer book. It destroys the Bible of the Jew and the Christian. And for them, their Messiah is coming back a second time to kill all the Jews on Saturday and all the Christians on Sunday. Okay, so, but together in Arabic, we are called Ahl el-Kitab, which means people of the book. Okay? Okay, so Allah is the God now, one of 360 pagan gods. Muhammad decides he's going to wipe out the Jews and Christians who have rejected him, and he creates out of a pagan god, the moon god, a monotheistic god. So Allah is a monotheistic god, but it's the moon god. That's why you always see the moon crescent. Now, by the way, just a little point here. There were 3 gods, actually, out of 360, the moon, the sun, and the stars. And Muhammad, for 12 years, the beginning of his ministry, he had a hard time getting rid of the sun and the stars. Who are these moon, sun, and stars? The moon is the father, the sun is the mother, and the 3 bright stars that we count Saturday nights when we do Havdalah, this is the 3 daughters of the conjugal relationship between the moon and the sun. This is a family, according to the Arabian pagan system. And it took Muhammad 12 years to get rid of the sun and the stars because he promised a monotheistic religion. So he took the moon god. It's like if the Greeks would take Zeus and make Zeus a monotheistic god. Is it the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? No. Still pagan god. Okay. Are we together here? Okay. This gets a little complicated sometimes. Okay. So Allah is the moon god. And like I said before, Allah does not like the Jews and the Christians. Okay, so let me give you an example. My wife and I traveled to Switzerland, summer of 2003, and my wife always gets me into trouble, which I like very much. How many people heard of Rodney Dangerfield? I don't get no respect. I was never on the first page of any American paper. I was never on the first page of any Israeli newspaper. There's only one country on the face of this earth that gives me any respect, and that's Saudi Arabia. Thanks to my wife, I made first page of Saudi Arabia's biggest newspaper with my picture. Okay? By the way, they said I'm a senior Mossad officer sent from Jerusalem to mobilize the Christians and attack Islam. So mobilize the Christians, yes. Attack Islam, yes. But I'm not a Mossad officer. I wish I were. And I was not sent by Jerusalem. They don't even like what I'm doing because I'm a rabble-rouser in the eyes of the Israeli government. You know, I heard from somebody very close to Bibi who said to me, this Avi is dangerous because he's stirring up the waters and we have to work with this Obama. Okay. Anyway, I'm not saying this is a criticism. I'm just saying, you know, sometimes you need a Confederate skirmisher wreaking havoc. I'm like a Confederate skirmisher. Okay, now. Okay, so chapter 5, verse 60. This is a very important part of the Quran. Chapter 5, verse 60 says, Allah cursed those who betrayed him and converted them into monkeys and pigs. Okay, does anyone know who the monkeys and pigs are? The Jews and the Christians. Okay. By the way, if you really want to know who the monkeys and pigs are, you know who you ask? Any 6, 7, 8-year-old Muslim school child going to the Saudi or Turkish funded schools here. They will tell you very quickly who the monkeys and pigs are. So what are the Muslims supposed to do to monkeys and pigs? Kill them. Okay? Because Allah cursed us. We are cursed of Allah. Okay? Now you got to understand something. Allah is a very capricious God. He makes a covenant with the Jews. Then he gets ticked off. He breaks the covenant. Then he makes a covenant with the Christians. He gets ticked off. And he breaks it. Because Allah is Al-Makr. He's the greatest of all the liars and deceivers. Who is the greatest of all the liars and deceivers? Okay. So when they say Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater, who is Allah? Satan. Okay. When he wants to kill the Jews and Christians, who is Allah? Okay. So I think we're all on the same page. I'm going to try and wrap this up as quickly as I can because we've got to get into the important stuff. This is just the ABCs. This is like the guidelines, okay? Chapter 5, verse 51 of the Quran. Believers, Muslims, take neither the Jews nor the Christians for your friends. The Jews and the Christians are friends with one another. Whoever befriends them will become one of them. Allah does not guide the wrongdoer. It is a capital offense for any Muslim to take you as their friend. They will work with you. They'll take your money. They may help you in certain things as a strategy. The bottom line is they cannot be your friends. Now, if they cannot be your friends, what are they? The enemy. And if their book is the book of the enemy, should that book be tolerated in the United States of America? No. Therefore, the book should be banned. Yes. Okay. Now, remember I was talking about the moon, the sun, and the stars? Now, you know, the Bible provides lots of answers. I'm forming a Bible party to run for the Israeli Knesset. The same Bible that Obama mocks. What does it say in chapter 17 of Deuteronomy? It says, anyone who prays to the moon, the sun, and the stars should be taken to the gates of the city and stoned. In other words, you've got to stone all the New Agers. But that's all right. They're already stoned. In other words, Islam, if they pray to the moon, this God should be banned in any Judeo-Christian country. It says within the gates of Israel. I want to ask you a question. In your opinion, do you think America is the gates of Israel?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it is. America is an extension of Israel.
Amen.
You know, I want to tell you something. Israel will never agree to be the 51st state of the Union. But Israel might agree that the United States be the second state of Israel.
Amen.
And when I get elected to the Knesset, you're going to see me put a law into, ask that that law be passed. I don't know if the American government will ever agree to it, but okay. And if a war breaks out, I want you to rest assured Israel will come to your defense.
So how can we support your campaign?
Well, there are lots of ways. Firstly, pray. Firstly, pray. And then secondly, write big checks. Thirdly, when you move to Israel, vote for me. Okay. And you will be moving to Israel.
And you give us
God will give you aliyah, and I'll explain why towards the end. In about we're down to about 3 hours left. Okay. Now, okay, so that's chapter 5, verse 51. Chapter 5, verse 31. I don't want to waste time the whole night with this, but it's something Rachel picked up from Al Jazeera regarding Algeria. There was a village in the north in the mountains of Algeria. The men of the village served in the army. Therefore, they were considered infidels and heretics because the army in Algeria, the government in Algeria, is considered an infidel heretic government because they're not fanatic Muslims. You have no Jews in Algeria. You have no Christians in Algeria. You have no Shiites in Algeria. It's all Sunnis. And they slaughter each other. They've killed 200,000 of their own people in the last 20 years. There's a civil war. And Rachel picks up this broadcast that really, really makes her sick to the stomach for a week. Rachel has to take sedatives to calm down. An Algerian Salafist terrorist is arrested by the army. He's interviewed by Al Jazeera, and he describes the modus operandi of this terrorist group. They isolate the village. The men have gone off to work by 6:30 in the morning. 7 o'clock, they go into the village. They knock on the doors. They ask all the women to cook them meals. The women cook them meals. After they have their meals, they pop hallucinogenic pills. Then they get on a high. Then they rape all the women. Then they slit their throats. Then they slit the throats of all the children, the elderly. They wipe out the entire village. It's not over, by the way. Then they go to their trucks and they take out chainsaws and they saw off all the arms and legs of all the people they just killed. So that when the men come home that night, the men will understand the punishment meted out to them by the Quran, as President Obama says, the Holy Quran. Chapter 5, verse 31 of the Holy Quran says, anyone who makes war against Allah and his Prophet Muhammad and spread disorder in the land, we will kill, we will crucify, we will chop their arms and legs off, and we will banish from the earth. Okay, now, by the way, in Africa today, especially in the south of Sudan, they take Christians and they crucify them. How do they crucify them? Not with crosses. They just go up to put them up on a tree. The feet are in the trunk of the tree and the arms are in the branches, but they put nails. And, you know, these poor Sudanese Christians are tacked up in the tree. And you remember with Jesus, the legionnaire slashes him in the, or pierces him, and the water comes out. Well, the Muslims, basically, while the guy's up on the tree, they take swords and they basically flay all the ribs while the guy's still alive. Women, of course, they cut off the breasts of the women so that they can never have children or breastfeed their children. Islam is a racist system, but like I said before, because the blacks in Africa cannot fight back as well as, for example, Christian whites in Europe or America, they fall to the mercy of these merciless Muslims who chop off their arms and legs and crucify them and kill them and torture them and rape their women. By the way, it was in the news today, if you were watching Fox News, that one of the big complaints about the Syrian army is they're raping all the women. You know, the Bashar al-Assad army is raping the women of the rebels. It's a mess. Okay, so that's chapter 5, verse 31 of the Quran. Let's look at one piece of the Hadith, and then we'll go on to Deception 4 and 5, and we'll finish with this part. In the Hadith, which is a form of Midrash, I don't know if you know what the word Midrash is. It's a kind of literature of the rabbis, which is not in the Canaan. It's not in the Torah. So the Hadith says, on the day of judgment, there'll be a final battle, and Muslims will kill every last Jew on the face of the earth. And some Jews will temporarily evade death. They will hide behind rocks and trees. And on that day, Allah will give mouths to the rocks and trees, and they will call out, "O Muslim pursuers, there is a Jew here hiding behind me. Come and kill him." How many people know that teaching? Yes. Until every last Jew is dead on the face of the earth. Okay? So that is Allah. That's Ishmael. It's Esau. It's Allah. It's not good. It's Satan. Okay? Now, Adolf Hitler was psychotic for many reasons, but I'll give you two. He thought he could conquer the earth, kill the Jews. Can you conquer the earth? Only the Lord has dominion over the earth. Amen? Anyone who thinks he can conquer the earth is stark raving mad. The Persians tried it, the Greeks, the Romans, the Mongols, Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin. Nobody can conquer the earth, okay? So you understand why that's a psychosis. Psychosis number two, he thought he could kill all the Jews. Can you kill all the Jews? Okay, now, there are two types of human beings. There are believers and there are non-believers. If you're a believer, you believe in God, you believe in the Bible, and therefore you believe in Jeremiah 31:35. Jeremiah 31:35 says, there will be no more Jews on the face of the earth when the moon, the sun, and the stars stop shining. You know what that means? There will always be Jews. Or at least you better pray for them, because when the Jews are gone, the world is gone. Okay. But you know that 2/3 of the human race, the pagans, the Hindus, the Buddhists, and the Muslims, they don't believe in God, but they all know that the Jews have been scattered to the four corners of the earth. So if you can't conquer the earth, you can't reach all the Jews to kill them. So you understand why killing the Jews is a psychosis.
Yes.
Okay. You heard what I just said. Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and Allah will give them mouths, and they will call out almost some pursuers to this Jew hiding behind me, coming to kill. So every Jew is dead. Okay, so what is Islam? Psychosis number 1, they want to conquer the earth. Psychosis number 2, they're going to kill all the Jews. So it makes Islam as psychotic as Nazism. But it's worse, because Islam wants to kill 2 billion Christians. Even Hitler had no plan to kill 2 billion Christians. The Muslims do. That's psychosis number 3. Psychosis number 4, they're going to kill 1 billion Hindus in India, because they're pagans. Psychosis number 5, they're going to kill 2 billion Buddhists, because they're pagan. By the way, that includes People's Republic of China. Now, I recommend to the Muslims not to mess with the Chinese. The Chinese know what to do. They don't have the ACLU. Psychosis number 6 is that 1/6 of the human race can kill 5/6 of the human race and get away with it. Psychosis number 7, what do the Muslims do to each other when they kill everybody else? They kill each other, not necessarily in that order. By the way, I have a teaching on the table about the Shiites and the Sunnis. That's 2 hours. We don't have time for that tonight either. Psychosis number 8, and this is the craziest of all the psychoses. When you die for Allah, what do you get? 72 virgins. I can't manage with Rachel. What am I going to do with 4 wives? 72 virgins would be hell. Yes, I heard the joke about it. Did everyone hear the joke about the Virginians? Should I tell the joke about the Virginians? Osama bin Laden dies for Allah. Actually, he really did die for Allah. And he goes to heaven, and he's there in his white cloak waiting for his 72 virgins to come and take care of him. And all of a sudden, who comes over? George Washington, and beats him up. And then Patrick Henry comes over and beats him up. And then President Adams comes over and beats him up. And a whole line forms of 70 tall, strapping 6-footers to beat up this Osama. He goes to God's office, says, Allah's office says, what's this business here? You promised me 72 virgins. He says, no, silly, you weren't listening. I said 72 Virginians. I haven't told that one in a long time. I'm always under pressure with the... I got so many... I could just do stand-up for the rest of the night. I want you to know. Okay, so... And I said this in Switzerland. I said Islam is not a religion. Islam is a criminal psychosis. And it's going to kill the Jews and kill the Christians and kill the Hindus and kill the Buddhists and kill the blacks. And they kill each other. That's a religion in the name of Allah? So, do we have any choice but to send the devil to the pits of hell for 1,000 years? Our whole thinking has to be aimed constantly at sending the devil to the pits of hell for 1,000 years. And that devil has to be Allah. Okay.
Good, that's good.
Thank you. The fourth deception is they believe in Jesus Christ. Okay, now you know that Jesus Christ is coming back a second time as a Muslim. How many people knew that? I'm not making it up. Ask any Muslim. And if you tell a Muslim, is Jesus a Muslim? They'll say, Alhamdulillah, somebody here really got it. You got it. You understand? Jesus is a Muslim. He's coming back and he's going to kill the Antichrist. You know what religion is the Antichrist? According to Islam, a Jew. Jesus Christ is a Muslim. The Antichrist is a Jew. Ask any Muslim. After he kills the Antichrist, you want another joke? I want to ask you a question. If Allah is the greatest of all the liars and deceivers, okay, you're with me. Allah is the greatest of all the liars. And he says that Jesus Christ is a Muslim. Is that truth or is that a lie? Okay. And he's going to kill the Antichrist, who is a Jew. Is that a truth or a lie? Now, what do you learn when you hear somebody talking like the devil? You do the opposite. So Jesus Christ is a Jew, and the Antichrist is a... Thank you. Now, Now, I don't want to say Obama's the Antichrist, but he is Salesman of the Month. Okay. Now, okay. Now, we're going to get to Obama in a few minutes, okay? Now, okay, so you have to understand, so after he kills the Antichrist, who's a Jew, he goes up to the Temple Mount, he prays with the Muslims, 400,000 of them, then they come down, they break the crosses, they destroy the churches of the Christians, they destroy the synagogues of the Jews on Judgment Day. Then all the Jews and the Christians, who are one people, have their throats personally slit by Jesus Christ the Muslim. Ask any Muslim. They'll say, yeah, you really, you know, good, praise Allah, you know this is the truth. Ask any Muslim. Okay, and then the fifth and final deception is that the Quran is a holy book. Now, how many people here know that the Quran was written by a rabbi and a priest? You guys are going to be out a lot of money tonight. You got to buy these books. You got to get them because they're in the first book, the fifth book, and the sixth book. The Quran was written by Ovadia ben Shalom and Sergius Buchaira. Now, I knew about this from oral testimonies of Jews and Christians, and then one day some very dear Catholic friends gave me a book called The Life and Religion of Muhammad, written by a priest from India, a Jesuit priest from India by the name of Menezes. And Menezes wrote this book in 1912. So if there are any smart Alex who say, oh, Avi has this stuff, or, oral testimonies, it was oral testimonies until about 3-4 years ago, until I got this book of Menezes, which was given to me by some Catholic people. And if you want to get it, you look for www.booksforromancatholics.com. Forgive me. I'm just saying, Catholics are not the enemy. The Pope may be very crazy in things that he does, but Catholic people are, in their own way, they're Christians too. Okay. So the Quran was written by a rabbi and a priest who were kidnapped by the Muslims because the Muslims were illiterate nomads. They did not know how to read or write. Now, they had a God greater than our God, which is Satan. They had a religion, Islam, greater than our religion. They conquered the world, but they didn't know how to read or write. So if they need a book greater than the Judeo-Christian Bible, you need to kidnap a rabbi and a priest and force them to write the book for you. So they said to the rabbi and priest, if you write us the book, we'll let you live. If you don't write us the book, we'll kill you. So please write the book for us. So the rabbi and priest sabotaged the book, but these primitive barbarians never understood the fingerprints of sabotage of the rabbi and the priest. No. You have to go to seminary, Jewish and Christian, to understand these things. And that's what's explained in my books. The Quran was written by a rabbi and a priest. It is a book of lies. It is a book of abrogations. It has numerologies that only a rabbi could put in. And the rabbi, through these numerologies, disproves the whole Quran. I explain that in my first book. If I had an hour, I'd go through the Quran and explain these things. I'm telling you, I have 25 hours. Okay, so we did the 5 deceptions of Islam. The Quran is a crazy book. It's not, this is going to fall. I'm going to put this here.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm not Jewish, I'm really Italian. I always talk with my hands, so. Okay, so the Quran is not even a plagiarism. It is a sick joke book written by a rabbi and a priest. Jesus Christ of Islam is like a $3 Clinton bill. Allah is not God, but Satan. And Islam is not a religion of love and peace, as is Judeo-Christianity. It is a criminal psychosis of hatred, death, and destruction. Okay. Now, if your president's a Muslim, you guys are in big trouble. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward, and with my wife's permission, she could get up and talk, but I do it very fast. It's harder for her in English. If you wanted to hear in Arabic, she could do it in Arabic very well. She can do it in English too, but she'll kill me. She says, I don't want to speak. You do the talking, I'll just sit there. Okay. Let me tell you, when we're home, I shut up and she does the talking. Okay. Okay. Rachel moved to Israel 43 years ago. I moved to Israel 44 years ago. Rachel, of course, I told you she grew up in a country where they say we kill the Jews on Saturday, we kill the Christians on Sunday. There's a lot of other stuff she picked up too, but about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, she started working with Israeli radio, and she was also a TV announcer in Arabic for 13 years, but her primary daily job was monitoring. She monitors their broadcasts. And she picked up broadcasts years ago where the Saudis and the Arabs were saying, we will have a Muslim in the White House in 2008. And, I have a wife, there's some women, when they're husbands and they wake up in the morning and the woman looks at the husband and says, "How are you today, darling?" No, my wife doesn't do that. My wife has X-ray vision. My wife gives me an X-ray. She knows exactly how I am. I don't have to say one word. You know how men turn colors when they lie to their women?
Yeah.
I turn colors when I tell her the truth. Rachel has everything figured out, but there's this one thing about a Muslim in the White House in 2008. She didn't know what they were talking about because nobody knew who that Muslim was. And by the way, even to this day, the American people don't know yet. Okay. You know, I want to tell you something. Remember that after the Desert Storm, many people were saying I'm a prophet? Let me tell you another story. Remember 2001, 9/11? Now, my first book, which was written in 1998, spoke about 9/11 4 years before it happened. Everybody said, Avi's crazy, Avi's crazy, Avi's crazy. After it happened, Avi's a prophet, Avi's a prophet, Avi's a prophet. I said, I'm not a prophet. I listened to my wife. My wife was listening to them. And what were they saying in Arabic? We're going to take the American planes and we're going to crash them into the World Trade Center and we're going to have a crash on Wall Street, literally, to destroy the American economy. So I come here to American airports, traveling internally, and I say, you guys, you have no security here. This is before 9/11. You guys are sitting ducks. And people look at me and say, you Israelis, you're all paranoid. They wouldn't dare attack America. Pride before the fall. Okay. So now Rachel goes to the airport. The guys with the long beards and these white gowns, they go right through security. It's this woman they check. And the 80-year-old women. It's all crazy. Should I tell them a story about Dallas-Fort Worth Airport? Rachel and I are flying out of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. And who's doing our security screening? A Muslim woman dressed head to toe with the burqa, you know, with the whole hijab and everything. And I don't know if you have figured this out already, but I'm a charmer. and I go up to this Muslim woman and I say in Arabic, "Good morning, sabah al khair." She almost faints. You know, she's so pleased that somebody talks to her in Arabic. And then I thought she'd be happy to hear it. My wife's Egyptian. I said to her, "Di Marati, Iya Masriya." This is my wife. She's Egyptian. And all of a sudden her countenance changed. She got very angry. She grabbed the hold of my wife's hand and shook it. "Why did you marry one of them?" In other words, she thought Rachel was a Muslim marrying a Westerner. Wow. Jew or Christian, doesn't matter. Muslim women may not marry a Jewish or Christian man. The opposite is permissible. When a Muslim man marries a Jewish or Christian woman, this Jewish or Christian woman becomes a Muslim baby factory. Because in Islam, the religion of the father is the religion of the children. Therefore, if the father of Obama was a Muslim from Kenya, what's the religion of the president? Okay, now let me tell you a little story. And I don't know if you guys like to look at YouTubes and stuff like that, but there's a YouTube called Saudi Plant, P-L-A-N-T. Go home, watch it. And I didn't make it. Very simple. How many people here have J.R. Church Prophecy in the News? Okay, now I'm regularly on J.R. Church. This week 2 programs are showing, which we did 2 weeks ago. So there was a pastor, Southern Baptist pastor from Milton, Florida. Milton is just outside of Pensacola. His name is Carl Gallups, and I spoke in his church finally. And he does this YouTube. He does it under the name of P.P. Simmons. And over 3 million hits, I think already maybe 4 million hits already. And he's quoting me on J.R. Church, quoting my wife Rachel, January 19th, 2010. My wife is watching the Nile Channel. Nile Channel is the main channel in Egypt. And the former foreign minister of Egypt, Abu Ghait, is talking at the round table forum, panel discussion, very calmly. And he's saying to the people, to the Egyptian people, you know, the Egyptian people must be patient. I had a meeting with Obama, and he told me the following. Firstly, he said, I swear I'm a Muslim. Obama swore to Abu Ghait that he's a Muslim. He said, my father is a Muslim. What does that make him? My stepfather in Indonesia was a Muslim. I was raised and educated in a mosque and in a madrasa till age 11. Okay, now how many people here heard of the Catholic Jesuit priest Francis Xavier? It was Francis Xavier who said, give me a child until 10 and I'll make him a man. So Mr. Obama was made a Muslim man by age 11 in the mosque and in the madrasa in Indonesia. Now, how many people here think that Obama is stupid? If you think Obama is stupid, raise your hand. This guy is very brilliant. He knows Arabic, because you could not study in the mosque without knowing Arabic first.
No way.
He knew Indonesian, which is another language. He knew English. He probably knows French and other languages too. This guy is brilliant. And everybody mocks him on radio and TV. He's stupid, he's inept, he's not a leader. This guy is really dangerous because he's smart. And as Farrakhan said, he was selected before he was elected. You know, I have to tell you, I have a very, very interesting life. I'm not in the high circles as you are, or Yoram Mettinger, of course, who was my boss at the Prime Minister's office. He works only with Congress and diplomats and politicians, and I'm in the grassroots. I'm in the churches in every little town, in every place in America. And why am I telling you this? I have a senior moment.
Thank God.
Huh?
Thank God you're in all those churches all
Yes.
over America.
At the grassroots. No.
You're talking about Obama.
Yes. Yeah, I went off in that direction. Anyway, this man. Yeah, I'm getting there. Anyway, so after, I'll come back to, I'll remember in a moment. He said, I've got some problems in America now. I've got health care, Obamacare. I've got economic problems, the recession. But I swear, I will show the Muslim world what I'm going to do to Israel. Okay, in other words, what does it mean what I'm going to do to Israel? Destroy Israel. Okay. When? Will it be before the elections in November or after the elections? After. Okay. What does Rachel pick up in Arabic? Obama has two tasks. One is to annihilate the Shiite threat, and secondly, to annihilate the Jewish threat. Okay, so the Shiite threat, I predict, is Iran, which will happen before the elections. Israel will be forced to attack, to lead the attack. Iran, Hezbollah, Syria, maybe Hamas will counterattack. Israel will take a severe missile beating. And then the evangelical Christians and the Jews will come to Mr. Obama, say, save Israel, be the Messiah. And at the very last moment, perfectly timed for the November elections, he will come in and finish the job and terminate the Iranian regime. And the United Nations will help to impose an occupational force in Iran, because you know the Iranian regime is completely crazy. Iran was divided in World War I between the British and the Russians. It was divided in World War II between the British, the Russians, and the Americans. And Iran, I predict, will be divided up again between the Americans, the British, the Russians, maybe the Chinese, maybe others. And you will see, I believe, because I'm a Sovietologist, the Russians, you can work with the Russians, you just have to pay the price. And the Russian price is a very high price. What did Roosevelt give the Russians in World War II? All of Eastern Europe. And it took until 1989 for communism to collapse. Okay, so I believe Obama, again, like Roosevelt, who's a socialist Democrat, he will make the Russians and the Chinese an offer they can't refuse. Yes?
Why is Obama giving away those islands off of Alaska?
What islands?
Well, actually, I don't know, but I read,
I know nothing about islands in Alaska being given away.
I read that it's going to be happening.
I don't know. I am the Aleutians.
Maybe. Oh, it's a place where there's a lot of oil.
To whom is he going to give it?
The Russians.
I didn't hear that. I don't know that. Tell Sarah Palin. So anyway, so I predict that the Iranian regime will be overthrown, and the United Nations will impose a one-world government, parliamentary democracy on Iran, which will be a blessing to the Iranian people. Anything is better than what they have now. Yes.
So what was the recent, the last couple days I read, and it was on Debka, I think reported it, that that Iran, that there were some bunker busting bombs that Obama agreed to sell to Israel, but Israel had to agree in turn that they wouldn't bomb Iran or attack Iran until after the elections.
Okay, I've heard that also. By the way, Rachel, my dear wife, opposes me on a certain point. She believes that Obama will not enter the fray to defend Israel. That she will allow that the Iranians, the Syrians, the Hezbollah, Gaza, maybe even Egypt will all attack Israel, and Obama will stand back. Now, you remember what I said before, at the very beginning, Dallas Council on World Affairs, that they were saying America will not resupply Israel? Isn't that what we're seeing now? That America is making conditions and conditions and conditions. So I believe, just one second, I believe what's going to happen is Israel's going to attack anyway. Because we cannot go through another Holocaust.
Right.
So we're going to attack anyway. When we attack, they will counterattack against us. And at some stage, it'll be just perfect timing for Obama to get reelected by coming to the defense of Israel. The Jews will all vote for him. Evangelicals will vote for him. Everybody's going to vote for him. And we're going to have this Muslim in the presidency another 4 years. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, is it foolhardy and a waste of our time to pay attention to any of the news information that we're getting in this country?
I would say, no, definitely you must pay more and more attention to the news. But I would say another thing. You're computer savvy, right?
Yes.
So you've got tons of underground information, which is the real information. But sometimes you watch Fox or other stations, and you do get interesting pieces of news which are very relevant. There's a lot of nonsense in the news, a lot of things you don't really want to watch. I mean, a lot depends on what kind of a job you have, what kind of work you have, what time you have available. And, you know, like Rachel and I are news addicts. We're on the media all the time. Okay. So I want to, did anyone else have a question? Okay. So I want to review now the Arab Spring and explain how Obama is going to bring 50 to 100 million Muslims into the United States of America, and how America will be turned into a Muslim country. Okay? Yes, yes, yes. I'm here, I'm like Paul Revere. Okay? I'm here to warn you that the enemy is coming. Okay. I want to go back a moment and tell you a little bit about my own childhood. When I was born in 1949, and until I moved to Israel in 1968, you had two types of people in America. You had Christians. America was a Christian country or a Judeo-Christian country, and the Jews were number two. How many Jews are there in America? 5 million, 6 million, okay? Muslims, in 1968, when I studied at New York University, there were students who were Muslims, but you didn't really feel a Muslim presence in America. Okay. So you got 5, 6 million Jews. How many Muslims do you have in America today? Does anyone know? 12, 15.
I thought 200, are there 200,000?
Okay. Do you pick up Michael Medved here in town?
No,
Okay, not anymore. I had a big fight with Michael Medved. I mean, I didn't have a fight with him. He had a fight with me. I love the guy to pieces. Wonderful host. And but once I said that there were 20 million Muslims in America, and he said, no, there are only 2 million. And there were so many emails sent to me and to him jointly calling him a jerk. So he won't have me on the show anymore. I mean, that was the last thing I wanted, that people would send a CC to him saying that he's a jerk. I don't think that there are 20 million. I think there are 30 to 40 million Muslims in America. They are coming in by stealth. And the Christians are all asleep, and the Jews are not asleep, the Jews are comatose. Now, if you're asleep, I can slap you, pinch you, or kick you, and you wake up. But if you're comatose, no matter what I do, you're not going to listen. The synagogues will not have me speak. And I'm a Jew. I'm a Jew of the Jews. I live in Israel. I served 30 years in the Israeli Army Reserves, and yet no synagogue wants to hear anything I'm saying. But the Christian evangelicals who understand eschatology know that what I'm saying fits. Makes sense. Okay. Because the Jews are very good at saying, never again, never again, never again, regarding a Nazi Holocaust. And today they are marching into the jaws of the Islamic Holocaust, and nobody sees it. And when I talk about Obama, everybody hates me. Except for certain conservative Jews who, politically conservative Jews who see it. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about how the Muslims came into this country until now, and how they're going to come in after. Okay. And by the way, like I said before, this has nothing to do with Obama. You remember what I said before? We won't let the Jews get into the way of our oil supplies. In other words, it is a given. If we go all the way back to George Herbert Walker Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, the father, he was no friend of Israel. James Baker III was no friend of Israel. Jimmy Carter was no friend of Israel. Bill Clinton was no friend of Israel. So there's a mindset in Washington, Democrat or Republican, that the Saudis are totally a necessity for the American economy to survive. They sell you their oil, and now they've got so much cash that they reinvest the cash back into America, which is today called the buyout. Okay. So I want to go through a number of ways in which Muslims come into this country. Like I said before, when I was in the university in 1968, I saw Muslims on the campuses. And, but it was a new thing. It was a novel thing, Muslims in the campuses. I was friends with them, by the way, because I hated the Christians and I loved the Muslims in those days. I was a real typical New York Jew. You know, been there, done that. I changed when I met Rachel because she said, hey, the Christians and the Jews are one people, the Muslims are the Goyim. They're the Gentiles. How can you hate the Christians and love the Muslims? But that's the Jewish myth that in 1492 in Spain, we were allies with the Muslims. Okay. So in my first book, I talk about something that I had from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, your next door neighbor, Duke University. Some oil-rich potentate from the Muslim world comes and says, I'm going to give $23 million to Duke University. No strings attached. $23 million. Does that get the attention of the university? Are they going to say no?
No.
So they make this big shindig in honor of this guy. He shows up, gives him the check. Everybody applauds. And then he makes a speech. And he says, you know, I love this university. This is really an international level university. It's not Ivy League, but it's a good university. He didn't say it's not Ivy League, but Duke University is a good university. So, but there's only one problem. You guys are international level, but you don't have an Arabic languages department. You don't have an Islamic studies department. You need to have this to be international. We're going to help you. We're going to give you another $23 million if you establish an Islamic studies chair, which includes Arabic. Now, you tell me, will the university say yes or no?
Yes.
Let's say yes. Next stage. We're going to give you, since you Americans don't have a clue, we're going to give you professors, Islamic professors, which is basically Islamic missionaries. And we're going to send you 500 male students a year. Okay, so by the end of 4 years, you have 2,000 students. Because you have freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, 500 in each class. They won't send you girls, they'll send you boys. You know why? Because boys can marry Christian and Jewish girls and turn them into baby factories. And they do. When they marry an American girl, what do they get after 2 years? Passports, American passports. When they get passports, then they can bring in their uncles and aunts and their cousins and their parents, and the growth of Islam in America becomes exponential. It becomes geometric, not arithmetic anymore. Okay, so let's say 500 students a year, Duke University. I want to ask you a question, $23 million. Do you know how much money the oil-rich Arabs have? Is it possible to say that they perhaps can do the same thing with 100 universities? Can they do the same with 500 universities? Because that's the money you give them for the gasoline. My wife Rachel picked up a broadcast where the Muslims were saying, we thought it was going to take us 150 years to conquer America. And we see if we can do it in 30 years. That's now. I'm not talking about a decade from, I'm talking about the next 5 years. Okay, let's go back a second. So let's go to 1979. 1979, America has, I think, the stupidest president it ever had, Jimmy Carter. Amen. Jimmy Carter takes your ally number one in the Islamic world, Iran, the Shah of Iran, who was your ally. The Shah of Iran was your cornerstone in the war against Soviet Russia, Cold War. And Jimmy Carter deposes the Shah of Iran. Who replaces him? Okay, now listen, this is very important. Remember I did the 5 deceptions of Islam? Jimmy Carter says that in Paris there is an exiled Iranian leader, a man of God. A man of God. His name is Ayatollah Khomeini. Now what did I just say about Allah? Who's Allah?
Satan.
So Ayatollah Khomeini is a man of Satan. But Jimmy Carter says he's a man of God. what is Rick Warren?
I'm a member of the council.
Where? Okay, Rick Warren also, the purpose-driven church. You know, you can't attack Islam. And I have news for you. The Rick Warren church will be the only church tolerated in America very soon. Because anybody who preaches the gospel goes to jail with me. I don't know how long I can continue preaching, because when I say Islam is a criminal psychosis and Allah is Satan, how long do you think it's going to be before some law is passed where they're going to shut me down? And if you're a pastor with any integrity, either, you know, you won't be able to function. You'll have to buckle under and just, you know, say, let's have rock bands at our church or sing hymns, and while the Jews are taken to the gas chambers. You know, that's what happened in Germany. Okay. So when the Shah of Iran is deposed, how many Muslims come here from Iran? Does anyone know? 9 million. Wow. These Muslims were good people. They were your allies in Iran. Okay. Had I said once that I hate the Muslims? I love the Muslims. They're good people. Those 9 million who came here, they served the U.S. military. They served the U.S. government. They were allies of Israel. I was in Tehran in '69 in a hotel full of Israeli officers and Iranian officers. Okay, so you got 9 million. Now, you know, Persians are not Arabs. Arabs are Semites. Persians are Indo-European. The Arab Immigrant Association says they got 7 million Arabs in America. Some of them are Christian, but the vast majority are Muslim. So let's just throw around ballpark figures. 7 million Arabs and 9 million Persians. How much is that? 16 million. Farrakhan has about 4 million Nation of Islam Muslims. How much is that now? 20. You know, I want to tell you another story from DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Happened to me when I was there. I returned to rent a car, and the young guy who receives the keys is a young Muslim from Indonesia, from Jakarta. And I was in a rush. I had to catch my plane. And he says to me, do you know that America is the greatest country on earth? I said, yeah, I know that. Why do you think that? He says, well, you know, I used to be a UPS FedEx delivery boy in Indonesia, in Jakarta. And one day I was in the American embassy in Jakarta delivering packages. And an American embassy official points his finger at me and says, hey, you want to go to America? There's a plane leaving tomorrow. Bring your family. Quick, bring your family. Get on. And he did. No passport, no visa, no nothing. There are charter jets flying Muslims in from all over the world for free, courtesy of the American taxpayer. The gates in Washington, the floodgates are open. And of course, Christians from Africa cannot come in, but Muslims can.
Oh, yeah.
And Jews also, they make trouble for Jews. But Muslims you have a green light to come into America. You know, there is a pastor, Glenn Howard, in Oklahoma City. I'd like you to meet him. And Pastor Glenn Howard had me now speak in 8 days. I spoke in like 15 churches. I was speaking morning and night. And he told me that he had, by the way, the guy's name is Mike LeMay. He has a radio show in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah,
you know Mike LeMay?
I've
been on his show many times. Mm-hmm. So Mike LeMay in Green Bay, Wisconsin, once one of the leaders in Green Bay said, you know, they're flooding us with Muslims, you know, from Somalia and other countries. And we asked the federal officials, why don't we bring in some Christian African refugees from Ethiopia and South Sudan? And said, no Christians, only Muslims. This was just last week I got this. Call Mike LeMay. I'm making this stuff up. They've got charter flights every day coming in from the Middle East and from all over the world. I met some guy, Rachel was with me. He said he was in Springfield, Missouri, and near a truck stop there, and 2 buses came in full of Muslims who were bussed up from the Mexican border.
Oh my gosh.
There is a bribed Washington, people who are allowing these Muslims in because there is an agenda to do so, because if Saudi Arabia feeds your economy. By the way, one of the things I heard today, we're watching TV. You'll forgive me on Shabbat for watching TV, but you know, we watch TV. We're not working, we're just relaxing. And hey, listen, the letter of the law killeth and the spirit of the law giveth life, right? So we're just relaxing in bed watching TV. And they were talking about, hey, Obama came to power and Wall Street went from 6 to 12,000. Isn't Obama wonderful? Now, You know, I've got to go back a second. I'm going to come back to the Muslim invasion in a moment. And, you know, we just had one of our greatest holidays, Purim. Okay? Who was the heroine in Purim? Queen Esther. So let me tell you about another Queen Esther. 1998, Netanyahu was prime minister in his first term. Bill Clinton is twisting his arm off. I mean, it was really bad. He forced Netanyahu to hand over 80% of Hebron. By agreeing to do that, Netanyahu lost all the support in the Likud, in the right wing. And within a year, James Carville came to Israel and overthrew him and brought in Ehud Barak. Anyway, a lot of other things were happening. So who comes to the rescue of Israel? Queen Esther. Who was Queen Esther? Monica Lewinsky. Now, and by the way, there are those conspiracy theory people who say that the Mossad sent her. Because really, the moment the Monica Lewinsky affair broke, all the pressure on Israel stopped. And Clinton now had a problem. Clinton should have gone to jail for lying and obstruction of justice, and he should have been impeached. He had to come up with an ingenious plan to stay in the White House and not go to jail. What did he do? He went to Saudi. He was there 3 days, and within 3 days, the price of oil dropped from $18 a barrel to $8 a barrel. Does anyone remember that? 1998. You were just down in Odessa yesterday. The oil people went bankrupt because it costs you $18 to get the oil out from under the ground. A lot of Texas went bankrupt. Oil producing areas, entire areas shut down. I know because I'm constantly driving through these areas. Bill Clinton bankrupted a whole bunch of Texas oil people by making this deal with Saudi. But the gas prices dropped. You know, I'm a traveling preacher, 22 years. And, you know, I always suffer for Christ in Florida in the winter. And I'm driving down Interstate 95 from New York to Florida. I stop in Savannah. Inevitably, you're going to stop in Savannah to fill up with gas. I paid 69 cents a gallon. How many people remember 69 cents a gallon? That was only 12 years ago. And the American people were so infatuated, so in love with Bill Clinton because people all of a sudden had money in their pockets, gas was cheap, the economy was booming again. As soon as the Senate overturned the impeachment and he did not go to jail, what happened to the price of oil? Went back up. How much did it go back to? Does anyone know? $32 a barrel, not 18. And from 32 to 50 to 70 to 90 to 100 to 147, and then you have 2008. It's all a manipulation. Yes, sir.
This is kind of a two-pronged question.
Yes.
First of all, it doesn't make sense to me when we have oil reserves in our country.
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I'm getting to that.
And then I guess, let's see, secondly, what did I want to ask you?
You're getting to be like me.
I am.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see, what was it? When did we really begin to see, and maybe you said this earlier, but when did our government really begin to put such importance on the Middle East and their oil reserves?
World War II.
Okay.
That's why 6 million Jews died.
So
And this country stopped being a Christian country about 100 years ago because the robber barons took over, you know, Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller, CFR.
Right.
It became mammon. It became money, oil. Yes, sir.
I look around the room, there's a lot of young people there, but I remember gasoline, 18 cents a gallon
How long ago was that?
in the mid-50s.
Okay, but you have to understand something. The dollar of the mid-50s was a silver coin. And the money today is monopoly money compared to what it was then. You know, my father and my mother rest in peace. My mother rest in peace. But my father and mother bought a house in 1953 in Long Island for $35,000. Today it's worth, you know, $2 million. Money doesn't mean anything. Okay. Okay. I'm going to get to your point now. Okay. So, I mean, you're bringing me off course a little bit. It's important. It's good that you no. It's good that you reminded me. We'll come back to the Arabs coming to America in a moment. How many people here heard of Pastor Lindsey Williams? One hand, 2 hands, 3 hands. Okay, I'm going to say something now. It may jog your memory. He wrote a book called The Non-Crisis in Energy. It was on Fox News. How many people heard the book Non-Crisis in Energy? Okay. Lindsey Williams is about my age. I think he lives in Albuquerque. I should have met him and it didn't work out, or in Phoenix. Anyway, next time. If it's Tuesday, it's Belgium, you know. And he was pastoring a group of oil prospectors up in Anwar, Prudhoe Bay. And when they knew for sure that there was enough oil there for 300 years of American needs, the one world government said, shut it down. We are in bed with the Muslims. When was this? About 30 years ago. Now, my testimony about the Dallas Council on World Affairs was 20 years ago. We won't let the Jews come in the way of our oil supplies because the one world government is in bed with the Muslims. It's the harlot riding the dragon. I mean, that's my interpretation. The harlot, what's a harlot? Harlot is a man, woman, or system paid for services rendered. And they're not of the Lord, because you cannot serve the Lord and serve mammon. America is ruled today by Antichrist people, not by Christians. I mean, this will sound crazy. I'm a Jew. I'm ready to give my life for a Christian revival, because if you don't have a Christian America, it's going to be an Antichrist America. And if it's an Antichrist America, it's going to be destroyed by God, judgment. And if America goes, Israel goes. Do you understand why I'm here tonight?
Yes.
Okay. So you understand now, America can have all the oil. Now what's happening is the pressure is increasing so much from beneath the surface here in America and in Canada that, you know, this Obama is sitting on a volcano. Okay, but that's okay. You know why? Because before the elections, I promise you, remember my words, I know you're taping this. The barrel of oil, I mean, the price of a gallon of gasoline, everybody, Fox keeps talking about $4, $5. Before the elections, a month or two before the elections, it's going to be down to $2.50. Remember my words. After the elections, go back to $5. It's all a manipulation with the Saudis.
That's happened before.
That's what I said about Monica Lewinsky. Why am I teaching about Purim, Queen Esther? Just to titillate, you know, everybody here? Okay, now, okay, let's get back to the Muslims. So, you've got 20 million Muslims at least. You've got charter flights bringing them in. The floodgates are completely open. You know, for years, I was talking about the Mexican and Canadian borders being totally porous. And they are porous. Nobody has a clue as to who's coming into this country. And like I said before, passports and visas are only required from Christians and Jews, not from Muslims. These people are coming in. Only God knows how many Muslims there are in America. Okay. You got 12 million illegals who came across from Mexico. So, of course, everybody's jumping on the Mexicans and the Latinos. And by the way, America's blessed by having Latinos because they're Christian. The Europeans don't have Christians. They have Muslims only coming in. Okay, now what's Obama going to do? He wants to legalize the Mexican illegals. Because when he legalizes the Mexican illegals, who else does he legalize? The Muslims, who are already here. You know what? I don't want to be facetious. We don't have his birth certificate, but it doesn't matter. His father's a Muslim. He represents an anti-Christian Muslim agenda. And he's a socialist, so he represents an anti-Christian agenda. Okay. Okay, so do you understand how today America has somewhere, in my opinion, between 30 and 40 million Muslims? How many Jews are there? 6 million, 5 million. Okay. Now, I want to stop for a moment, and before I explain how he's going to bring another 50 to 100 million Muslims, I want to explain something about the Jews. The Jews are going to be annihilated very soon. By whom? By the Muslims. Where? Here. Here, there, everywhere. Now, in my red book, blue book, black book, and yellow book, in the last 4 books, I have a testimony called the Edmonton Revelation. Testimony number 1. The most important testimony of all my testimonies is what I started with, the Dallas Council on World Affairs. So it's fresh in your memory. What made America great is the barrel of oil. How many people remember that didn't forget it already? Okay? The second testimony in importance is about the genocide war that is being prepared for the Jews outside of Israel. And I can make it very long. I know time is running out, and I'm going to try and wrap things up because we got to get to the finish by midnight. We only have about 2 hours left now. I was in Edmonton in a synagogue on the Sabbath, Orthodox synagogue. And the rabbi introduced me as an Israeli army spokesman and said, the Christians give Avi 10 hours. We Jews today are going to give him 10 minutes. Why 10 minutes? Because after the service on Shabbat, we have the Kiddush, which is the meal, and people eat in 10, 15 minutes and go home. So that people want to finish and go home and take their nap, Shabbat. So I got 10 minutes to share what I do in the church, 10 hours or like tonight, 2, 3, 4 hours or whatever. And I get up to speak and I get shouted down. By whom? 2 liberals. See, liberals are liberal with you if you're liberal like they. But if you're not liberal like they will not be liberal with you. Because liberals are socialist totalitarians. And you know what? I didn't speak. I was in Edmonton, Canada, in an Orthodox synagogue, and I didn't speak. Who came to the rescue? A Christian Messianic woman. Who was going to synagogue every Shabbat, because guess what? Jesus did not go to church on Sunday. He went to synagogue. And by the way, I don't have time, but I got to tell the joke. Nothing has, no, what I'm going to say now is a joke. Nothing has changed in 2,000 years. You know, you read about Jesus going, reading from the Torah, reading from the prophets, and then giving a sermon. That's exactly the way it is in synagogue. Nothing has changed in 2,000 years. So how do 100 rabbis change a light bulb? 100 Reform rabbis first ask the question, does the light bulb want to change? 100 conservative rabbis ask the question, say, let's establish a committee. How do 100 Orthodox rabbis change a light bulb? Change? So nothing has changed in 2,000 years. Okay, so you want to know about Jesus the Jew, you go to synagogue on Shabbat. So this woman was going every Shabbat. People understood who she was. They respected her. And she said, if you're not going to let Avi speak, I have to say a few words. I said, okay. So she gets up and she tells a testimony about an Egyptian Muslim woman doctor who immigrated to Canada, and she is now in hiding in a safe haven house with 24-hour protection from the Canadian police. What happened? The Muslims, when they found out she was coming to Canada, they said, you're going to work for us. And she said, what does that mean? You're going to collect all the information on the Jews, because as a doctor, when Jews come to the clinic, Jews have to give their names, addresses, telephone numbers, place of employment, car license, car insurance. And doctors know everything about their patients. And you're going to put it on a hard disk and you're going to give it to us. Now, not only that, you're going to collect the names of all of the Christians who are married to the Jews. Because in America today, it's about 70% intermarriage. For every 10 Jews, 7 marry Christians. I mean, we hate you till we marry you. And you're going to give us that information too. And you're going to tell us who the pastors are that love Israel. And by the way, there are not too many pastors who love Israel. Okay? And their churches, and anybody who smells of the Jews. And when a war breaks out between Israel and its neighbors, a war will break out in Canada, US, Mexico, Europe, and we will annihilate all the Jews. Because as you know, on the day of judgment, Allah will give mouths to the rocks and trees, and they will call out, there's Muslim pursuers, there's a Jew, come and kill him. Now, when you have 6 million Jews in America and no Muslims, you might think that's crazy. But when you have 6 million Jews in America and 40 million Muslims, okay, and let's say only 10% are terrorists, that's 4 million. How many of the 6 million Jews can be killed by 4 million terrorists who have a head start, and the Jews don't even want to hear me speak? What does it say in Hosea 4, verse 6? My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Okay. What does it say in Ezekiel 33, verse 6? If the watchman on the tower sees the sword coming and does not blow the shofar and sound the alarm, the blood is on his hands. Do you understand why I'm here tonight? Okay, I'm here because I have no choice. I have to do God's work. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about how Obama is going to turn America into a Muslim country. I just spoke, what day is today? Today is Saturday. Thursday night, I spoke in Springfield, Missouri. Did you ever hear of Dr. David Allen Lewis? He was an Assembly of God pastor in Springfield, and when he died, his widow took over the ministry. And I speak there every 6 months. Can you imagine a Jew from Israel speaking at the Assemblies of God Prophecy Conference every 6 months? And anyway, so I was there Thursday night. When I was there 2 years ago, they said to me, the featured speaker the month before was a pastor from the Assemblies of God by the name of Don Jones. I don't expect any of you, if you don't know David Lewis, you probably don't know Don Jones. This Don Jones has an orphanage in Haiti and an orphanage in Mexico. After the earthquake in Haiti, he went to Haiti, he met with a senior UN official, and the senior UN official told him that Obama had told the senior UN official that America would be Muslim by 2016. What's 2016? His 8th year of presidency. Taking it as a given that he gets reelected. Okay? Now, Rachel has been hearing this how many years? That America is going to be Muslim?
35 years.
They said, we thought it would take 150 years. It's going to take us 30 years. Now, you know, in physics, when you have vectors all intersecting each other, you know there's something going on there. So I have a vector from Assemblies of God. I have a vector in Arabic. And every day, Rachel and I are collecting pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that give us the complete picture. And of course, the Americans, you know, don't have a clue because the media won't tell them. And only in certain select Christian groups will this information get out. Now, I want to say something maybe a little bold, but I think you'll all agree with me. This is the generation, more than any other generation in the last 2,000 years, that has seen more Bible prophecy fulfilled than any other generation. Before our very eyes, we see verses in the Bible coming to life. We're doing this, I know we're taping it, and so we have to time it. You know, we're in March of 2012. Well, February 2011, 13 months ago, the Arab Spring, so-called, began. And had I quoted you Isaiah 19, verse 2, you'd say I'm crazy. Does anyone know Isaiah 19, verse 2 offhand? You don't have to open the books because I'm here to share it with you. It's one verse. It's in Isaiah 19, verse 2, it says, Egyptian will fight Egyptian. Brother will fight brother. Neighbor will fight neighbor. And city will fight city. In Egypt. Well, isn't that what we just saw in the last 13 months? You know, you had the soccer game in which 76 people died. How many people remember this just about a month, 2 months ago? 76 people died in a soccer game. The fans of Port Said killed the fans of Cairo. City against city. The war in Libya between Gaddafi and anti-Gaddafi, it's city against city. It's tribe against tribe. And it's never going to end. And I have news for you. It's never going to end in Syria. It's never going to end in Yemen. Because Allah is a God who rejoices in the death of even those who follow him. Okay. How many people know the chapter in Ezekiel, chapter 29 of Ezekiel? That's another, you know, if I had quoted this 13 months ago, you'd say I'm crazy. Chapter 29 of Ezekiel says, listen carefully, Egypt will become a desolation. There will be no one walking in Egypt from Migdol all the way to Aswan. What do you have in Aswan? A dam. The Aswan Dam. And the Egyptian people will be scattered to the four corners of the earth. Well, you know what it means? There won't be any Egyptians in Egypt anymore. It's going to be a desolation. I mean, I can quote the whole chapter. It's unbelievable. It's so poetic, and it's so literary and so beautiful, and it explains exactly what's going to happen to Egypt. There will be no Egypt very soon. And the Egyptians are going to be scattered to the four corners of the earth. What's one of the countries that will receive Egyptians?
US.
United States of America. Okay. Now, one of the things Rachel taught me, very important point, she was among the last of the Jewish people to leave Egypt. And her Christian girlfriend said to her, we're sorry to see you leave because you're the last of the Saturday people. Who do they go after the Saturday people? The Sunday people. And that's what they've been doing the last 30 years. They've been doing this for 100, 200, they've been doing it for many years. Okay. Now, Rachel and I are a very romantic couple. Most couples go to Blockbusters, pick up a nice movie, make popcorn, and sit back on the sofa, enjoy life. Rachel and I watch Egyptian TV, Saudi TV, Al Jazeera. And we're watching the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood speaking 4 years ago. 4 years ago, they had elections, and Hosni Mubarak was stuffing the ballot boxes, and in spite of him stuffing the ballot boxes, the Muslim Brotherhood got 20% of the vote. They got 20% of the vote, in spite of the stuffed ballot boxes. So the head of the Muslim Brotherhood said, guess what? next elections we win. He's a prophet. The next elections, they got 40% of the vote. And there's another party called the Salafists, who are even more fanatic Muslims. They got 35% of the vote. So how much is 35 and 40%? 75%. Okay, how many people are there in Egypt today? There are 86 million. 10 million about are Christian, Coptic. 76 million are Muslims. With all these fanatic Muslims who say we got to destroy the Sunday people, what's going to happen to the Sunday people? They're going to be gone. They're going to be dead or converted to Islam, or they're going to be gone. I predict they're going to be gone. Now, the Egyptian Christians are educated, hardworking, and industrious. And some of them have a lot of money. So what's going to happen when they're forced to choose between death and conversion to Islam? They're going to leave. And I know today that the American government is not very user-friendly to Christians from Egypt. But I believe that's going to change. I may be wrong, but I believe that's going to change. And I'll explain why. America today has a housing slump. Fox News is constantly talking about the housing slump. That the American economy is not taking off because of the housing slump. There are no jobs. And, you know, we were listening to Rush Limbaugh coming here 2 days ago, and he keeps talking about the unemployment and loss of 2 million jobs, and everybody's attacking Obama, Obama, Obama. Now, I want to ask you a question. When 5 million or 10 million Egyptians, Christians, come here, aren't they going to need homes? What happens to the housing slump? It's no more housing slump. On the contrary, it's a housing boom. Okay, when is that going to happen? I predict before the elections. Who's going to get the credit for overcoming this housing slump? Obama. He needs the Christians to leave Egypt to come here. Okay, next stage. They leave Egypt. What happens to the Egyptian economy when the Christians are kicked out? It tanks, because the Christians leave, they take their money and they take their talent, and you're left with Muslims who sit around smoking the hookah all day, you know, the nargila, and looking at women and telling bad jokes, you know. Now, will a company like Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, IBM, Intel, Hilton Hotels, are they going to invest in a country like Egypt, which is going to kill anybody who's not a Muslim? So what happens to the Egyptian economy? Collapse. When the Egyptian economy collapses, what happens to the Egyptian Muslims who remain? They starve. When they starve, what happens? They leave. They'll go to where the grass is greener. Where's that? America, because you got a Muslim president. And he has said that America will be Muslim by 2016. So you guys are going to be expecting 50 to 100 million Muslims coming from the Middle East in the next 5 years. Unless you get a Christian revival and you put an end to this crap. See, but the Americans don't have a clue. Americans don't have a clue. And the Jews don't have a clue. And when you have 50 to 100 million Muslims coming here who hate the Jews, when the orders are given to kill the Jews, a lot of Jews are going to die. And a lot of Christian spouses and children of the intermarriage are going to die. And you know what's going to happen? Where are they going to go? They're going to go to Israel, because that's the only place they'll be safe. Because the Muslims are going to be killing Jews everywhere, Canada, Mexico, Europe. Do you understand why I'm forming a Judeo-Christian party to run for the Knesset? Yes. This party will represent the immigrants coming from the West. Today, the Christians in Israel are primarily Russian, Ukrainian, Ethiopian, or local Arabs, which is not an easy bunch of people to work with. I believe in the principles that made America great 200 years ago. Judeo-Christian Bible values. Yes. And these are the values I want to instill in Israel. And the Messiah is coming to Israel, or returning to Israel, not only for the Jehovah's Witnesses. He's coming for everyone. And he's coming for you. And you're going to end up in Israel too. I know today there are laws. Don't ask me about the laws, but the day is coming soon. Because the Messiah is coming for everyone. That's what it says in the Jewish scriptures. Isaiah 60, Zechariah 14, Zechariah 8:23. Okay. And the fact is that Jews were supposed to witness to the world, and we failed in our commission. The Christians today are the paratroopers of the Bible, sharing the word to the nations. Jews don't do it. So you know what God said? You failed in the commission, I will scatter you, and you will witness to the nations through your genes. Do you understand why Jews are marrying the Christians? Okay. Do you understand why we will be receiving 5 to 10 million Jews and Christians in Israel within a few years.
I want to be one of them.
God willing. You know, asking will be granted, seek and you shall find, knock on the door. Ben Gurion also said once, anyone who's crazy enough to want to be with us is welcome. Okay. So I want to wrap up my message and say the following. I don't know what's going to happen in November. I pray Obama's defeated. But Obama, I think the agenda that put him in office in the first place will find a way to bring prices of gasoline down to $2.50. Wall Street will go up to $15,000 or $18,000. The building slump will be over. The economy will begin to take off, and the Republicans are going to be at a total loss. And the Democrats and Time Magazine and the Nobel Peace Prize people will say, "You see, we told you so." Okay, because it's all a manipulation, and it's based on the complete emptying out of the Arab world of its people. By the way, Syria, we didn't talk about Syria. Your government supports the Muslim Brotherhood. You know what happens when the Muslim Brotherhood takes over in Syria? All the Christians of Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq get massacred. What happens in Egypt is going to happen in Syria. So what's going to happen? I mean, you have a government which is promoting the Holocaust of the Christians in the Middle East. And I ask you, where are the churches? You know, you go to a church, with all due respect, and I love the churches because synagogues won't even allow me to speak. The church, some churches allow me to speak, so I shouldn't be attacking, you know, the hand that feeds me. The churches are feeding me. But if the churches don't wake up and defend the Christians who are being holocausted in the Middle East today, you're talking about 10, 11, 12 million. What about Nigeria? What about Cameroon? What about Sierra Leone? What about Cote d'Ivoire? All these countries, you have civil wars where Gaddafi himself said Islam will be the first religion of Africa.
The worst one is Cameroon.
I know Cameroon. By the way, Liberia. What's his name? Taylor, Charles Taylor.
1,000 people were killed and I survived just 1 hour before.
In 1986. He's a survivor. I don't know if you heard about Leknios disaster, the bomb that was planted there by our president here, and they turned it around and said Israel did it. And he was the only survivor of 80,000 people in his village.
45 minutes before the explosion.
3 children, and he was one of them. Dr.
Well, praise God you survived. But I'll tell you, you had, I think it was in Sierra Leone, one of the terrorists, his name was Sanko. What country was Sanko in? I think it's Sierra Leone. He was trained by Gaddafi to kill the Christians. Charles Taylor in Liberia was trained by Gaddafi to kill the Christians. And all of these civil wars in Africa were funded by Gaddafi. I mean, Gaddafi, it was good he's dead. He wasn't a good guy, but his plan was the Holocaust of the black people. And you know, the media here doesn't talk about it. Nobody talks about Africa. It's in my books. I talk about Africa.
One of the Secretary of State in the U.S. said, "Oh, Sudan has nothing. You know, there is no reason for us to go to Sudan and rescue these people because you know there is nothing in them."
You know what? I want to tell you something.
There was a lady. I don't want to call her name.
Which one? Jezebel?
Yes.
Okay.
Just
Okay. By the way, do I have 10 minutes more? Because I've kind of wrapped up some of the stuff. I want to get to the newest book, which I just wrote. And it's a little complicated, but it's important stuff for you to know. Remember I said Moses says to Pharaoh, "Let my people go, they may go around in circles in the desert." The intention of Pharaoh was to keep them slaves. The intention of Moses was to take them out so that they could serve the Lord where? In the desert. What does this book do? It defines what is the desert. The desert is not the Negev. The desert is not Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, because Santa Caterina, which was built by Helena, was part of pharaonic Egypt. There was an Egyptian army there. There was garrison there. There's no way the Israelites would have been in Sinai Peninsula. It was in northwestern Saudi Arabia. The Caldwells have documented this. They have archaeological proof also. Anyway, I'll tell you, the Caldwells were a revelation for me. My yellow book is dedicated by name to Jim and Penny Caldwell. Jethro is the high priest of Midian. Does anyone know where Midian is? Medina. You have Mecca and Medina. Now, Mecca did not exist as a city in those days. Mecca was just a black stone in the middle of nowhere. And it took 3 days to walk from Medina to Mecca. Okay. There are 2 names of Medina you might have heard of. If you watch the news in Arabic, see, my wife and I are very romantic. We watch the news in Arabic, and they give the weather forecast in Saudi Arabia, And in Arabic it says Medina Minawara. Does anyone know what the word Minawara means?
No.
It means menorah. You know Exodus 25? The Caldwells show in their teachings the menorahs etched into the rock. The Israelites were there in Arabia. They etched the menorah in the rock. So Medina Minawara means Medina, which is all lit up. The menorah means all lit up. Okay? Another name for Medina is Yathrib. Does anyone know what Yathrib is? Yathrib means Jethro. Okay, so Jethro was the high priest of Medina, Midian. If you look at the maps of Arabia, northwestern Arabia, it says the mountains of Madian or Midian. Okay, now I have to tell you something. I may be a crazy Jew because I'm the only Jew in the world who's talking about a Judeo-Christian party to run for the Knesset, for our government, and I didn't even talk about that. That's 2 hours more. And I'm the only Jew who's talking about the phylacteries and the prayer shawl as something that predate. Well, the phylacteries predate the giving of the Ten Commandments. Now, what did I do here? I took the black stone in Mecca, and I replaced it with the phylacteries. What are the phylacteries? They're a replica of the black stone in Mecca. I mean, the rabbis think I'm nuts, but I prove it in the book that it's true. So who's going to read this? Are the Jews going to read this? Probably only the Christians for now. But eventually, thanks to the Christians, the Jews will read the book too. Now here, I show in the inside of the first page of the book, I show the phylacteries. You see, the phylacteries are straps with a black cube on the forehead and on the arm. Moses was taking the children of Israel, who were very primitive shepherds, nomads, pagans. He's taking them out of Egypt from the pyramid triangular system to the cubic system. The cubic system was across the pond in Arabia. This was the freedom. You know, Moses gave signs to Pharaoh, signs to the elders, and signs to the children of Israel. So this phylactery is an important sign. Where do we see this in the New Testament? Does anyone know? Matthew 23, verse 5. Matthew 23, verse 5 was the first verse of the New Testament I ever read. Where did I read it? In the Jewish Theological Seminary. To prove that the phylacteries were in use 2,000 years ago. I met a priest from the Greek Orthodox Church, and he told me the Greek Orthodox priests, at least some of them, put on a Greek Orthodox phylactery. I said, why do you do that? That's a Jewish thing. He said, Jesus Christ did it, so we do it. Okay, now here at the back inside cover is a picture of a church in Maraba, Jordan. And it shows Jesus the child, Joseph and Mary at his bar mitzvah. And Gamliel with the phylacteries on his forehead. This is from a Greek Orthodox church in Jordan. This is not a Jewish picture. You see the halos? So I put it in my book. I'm going to try and wrap up. I'm just giving you a few hints here. There are rabbis who I've spoken to who say that what I'm saying is not heresy, but just the rabbis never spoke about this. It's an unknown for the rabbis, what I'm saying. They said the Torah is not a GPS. Okay, now let me prove to you how the Torah is a GPS. When the Torah discusses the tent of the meeting, you know, the tabernacle, and it explains very, very precisely the beams, the wooden beams, how they are to be aimed. And it says some of the beams are going to face north. Some of the beams are going to face east, which is Kedma. Some of the beams are going to face, it doesn't say south. It says Temanna. What is Teman? Teman is Yemen. So wait a second. Yemen is where? To the south. If you're in Arabia, Yemen is to the south. And westward, it doesn't say westward, Marav. It says Yamma. Yamma means facing the sea. So if Yemen is to your right and the Red Sea is behind you, where are you? In Arabia. Okay, I mean, these are technical things, and you have to read the Torah in Hebrew to understand what I'm saying. But I give the translation and transliteration here. Okay. How many people remember the story about Pinchas, or in English, Phineas, when he took his skewer and he skewered the Israelite prince and the Midianite princess? They were having sex in front of the, which is part of the liturgy of the Midianites, to have sex in front of the Ark of the Covenant, and 24,000 Israelites died from the plague. because of this. When Phinehas skewered them and killed them, the plague stopped. Okay. After this, we're talking about not too far away, in the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy. This was in Numbers. Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 2, verse 2. God says, enough being camped around this mountain, Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai. Turn northward and head to the land of the Amorites that I promised you. Okay? So if we have to head north, where were we? I think it's late for everybody here. We were south. We're in Saudi Arabia. Okay, now, how many people know where Jethro is buried? Does anyone know where Jethro is buried? Haven't you guys been to Israel? My son and I have a tourism company called Lipkin Tours, so you can sign up and come with us if you want, or maybe you have a tour going to Israel, I don't know, but if you come to Israel, you'll see where he's buried. He's buried in Tiberias. Jethro, the high priest of Midian, what's he doing in Tiberias? You know why he's in Tiberias? How many people have Josephus at home? Antiquities of the Jews. Josephus writes 2,000 years ago that Jethro came with the 10 tribes, and he and his family received an inheritance together with the 12 tribes. It's in Josephus. It's in my book. I quote it. Okay. By the way, Moses was in Ethiopia, Sudan. How many people know that? It's in my book. That's from Josephus, and it's from Yalkut Shimoni, which is Midrash. Most people don't know how Moses was in Ethiopia. Okay. After the killing of the Midianite princess, according to my interpretation, Jethro has to flee for his life, and his family has to flee because now they're in-laws of Moses, who's at the head of this bunch of people that killed the Midianite princess. The Midianites are out to get him. And you know, there's a big battle in which her father gets killed. It says, Cosbi, the daughter of Tsur. Tsur means stone. I think he was the high chief of this black stone. So God led us to the stone and then led us away from the stone, gave us the 10 Commandments, and made us a Jewish people instead of just pagans. I mean, this is a whole a lot of rabbis, maybe some Christians will say, you know what, we don't like any of this. But, you know, this is, I believe God is putting this in my heart. I have to write it. If you get the book, I'll appreciate your critique, your comment. Read it. Tell me if you think this is right. I'll conclude with one or two little things about this subject because I know it's already late. 1 Kings chapters 18 and 19. These are very important. They're in this book also. You know that Elijah has a contest with 450 priests of Baal. Who wins the contest? Elijah. And after he wins the contest, 450 priests of Baal get executed. Now don't forget that Jezebel executed all of the Israelite princes except for Elijah. And of course, Obadiah saved 100. They were hidden in 2 caves, 50 and 50, and he fed them. Anyway, so now, I keep saying Hillary. Jezebel says to Elijah, he says, what's happened to them is going to happen to you or me. So he flees to Beersheba. Where's Beersheba? Does anyone know what tribe Beersheba belongs to? Judah. Okay, Beersheba is not the desert. Beersheba is Judah. And he gets there. He probably has a sunstroke and heat stroke. He's very tired. He falls asleep. And the angel of the Lord brings him food and water and says, you know, you have a long trip. You have 40 days and 40 nights in the desert until you reach Mount Horeb. Now, by the way, Mount Sinai and Mount Horeb, according to the Caldwells, are 5 miles apart. They're peaks of the same range. And you know that Elijah ends up in a cave, which the Caldwells believe they found. And he says to God, better for me to die. I don't want to be a prophet anymore. And God says, you know, shut up and get over it. You're in Texas now. And sends him back. He says, go back and minister to your people. Okay, now you'll forgive me for talking a little bit about Christianity. Remember Paul, the Apostle Paul? He has his epiphany. After Paul has his epiphany, does he go back to Jerusalem to the apostles? Where does he go? What?
The days of Arabia.
The days of what?
Desert.
To the desert of Arabia. Now, according to Christian tradition, he was in that cave where Elijah was. So there's something going on in Arabia. By the way, what does it say in Galatians 4:25? Hagar and Mount Sinai, which are where? In Arabia. You read Josephus, it's in Arabia. So Helena comes in the 4th century and builds this monastery in the middle of Egypt. It's not there. It's a mistake. Mount Sinai is in Arabia. Okay, so I want to conclude with Deuteronomy 11 and a speech made by Osama bin Laden. And Osama bin Laden says, I don't have my glasses. By the way, the older you get, the shorter your arms become. Well, I'll just paraphrase. Okay. Okay, now this is also a quote I received from the Caldwells. And this is one of the things that, oh, this is very good. You're also 35 years old. Yeah, okay. Point 8 at the back of my book. Why did Osama bin Laden say the following? Thus, Israel and behind it America killed all the children of the world. And who is to stop Israel from the murder of our sons tomorrow in Tabuk? Tabuk is in Saudi. Or in Jauf, or in the surrounding areas of Palestine. And what will the rulers of Saudi Arabia do if Israel starts to expand its unfair, unjust, and false settlements, which the leaders do declare as such, beyond its currently known boundaries, and says, quote, our borders extend to Medina. You know, I said to myself, these Saudis are crazy. Since when are we claiming Medina? And I said, son of a gun, that's a great idea. And then I came to the conclusion, this is capture the flag. If they get Jerusalem, they win, we die, they die. Because everybody dies. This is a war between God and Satan.
That's right.
If we win, we get Mecca and Medina, we ban Islam, we win, we live, they live. Because I don't seek the death of the Muslims. Do we seek the death of the Germans, the Japanese, and the communist countries? We seek the termination of evil systems. So the borders, my last words, the borders that God promised, I go by Deuteronomy 11, which says from the Great Sea, the Mediterranean, to the Euphrates, something we never saw before, and from Lebanon to the desert. What's the desert? It's not Sinai. It's not the Negev, it's Saudi Arabia. And what's going to happen? The Muslims here are going to massacre the Jews and their Christian spouses and children. Do you understand? There's going to be a massive immigration of Muslims to this country, a massive flight of Jews and Christians from this country to Israel, to the new borders, and then that's when the Messiah shows. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Avi.